Master Jet studied the map for a few moments, and then traced a line across the ocean that lay between the 4 continents. Then, she suddenly asked,
"Do you know a lot about seafaring, Sonny?"
He slowly shook his head. Sonny replied,
As much as the next guy, I guess.
She smiled.
Understandable. In truth, navigating the oceans is not an easy task. If it was, we could have just used the Pacific or the Atlantic to transport food from South America, but trying to sail them is pure suicide for now.
Soul Reaper leaned back and took a sip of coffee.
Most of our planet is covered by water, and most of that water is infested with dreadful nightmare creatures. That is because most gates open underwater, and since we have very few methods of battling them below the sea, and very little reason to, we just leave those gates be. Humanity might still hold 4.5 continents, but we have surrendered all of Earth's oceans to the enemy.
She sighed, then dejectedly shook her head.
Still, no civilization can exist without efficient transportation, and shipping cargo across water has been the mainstay of transportation since the dawn of time. So, we maintain a presence in the Indian Ocean. Navigating it is not easy, however, because there are unspeakable and uncountable horrors dwelling in the depths.
Sonny hesitated for a moment, then asked with a bit of curiosity,
Wouldn't it be easier to ship stuff through space then?
Soul Reaper grimaced.
It is not cost-efficient. Getting to orbit requires considerable resource commitment, more so with heavy cargo, and resources are something we desperately lack. Plus, space is rife with its own dangers.
Sonny raised an eyebrow. What dangers? She simply shrugged.
That is above even my pay grade, so I don't know. Suffice it to say that simply maintaining a scattering of satellites that support the network and the obel scale is already a dire challenge. Whether you like it or now, water is the only way.
He frowned. Sonny asked,
So how do we manage to make use of the ocean if it's so dangerous?
Master Jet smiled.
Well, the answer is pretty simple. House of Night.
Sonny blinked a couple of times. The Great Clan. She nodded.
The representatives of the House of Night excel in guiding ships through turbulent waters. They are not called Nightwalkers just to honor the clan founder. After all, to move across the ocean, convoys that consist of massive, heavily armored ships employ the services of Nightwalker navigators.
Sonny leaned back, thinking. He knew a bit about the third and the least prominent Great Clan, but not too much. Unlike Valor and Song, which resembled most legacy clans and had originated from a single family, House of Night was born from an alliance of several prominent clans. They resided in a dire region of the dream realm known as Stormsea, and controlled one of the 3 great citadels, which, as far as he knew, resembled a giant ship and was most likely left behind by one of the 7 demons. Sonny also knew that the House of Night did not possess a sovereign of their own. Anvil of Valor and Kai Song ruled their families, but Asterion was seemingly not related and had nothing to do with the third great clan. It was not clear why the other 2 powers did not consume the weaker one. Now that Sonny learned of the pivotal role Nightwalkers played in sustaining human civilization, he guessed that they simply offered too much utility to be pressured into submission. Alternatively, the nature of the region they controlled might have simply been too hazardous for either Valor or Song to invade, or their existence created a bit of much-needed balance and deterrence between the 2 dominant great clans. What was clear, however, was that the House of Night was deeply connected to Storm God. There were just too many coincidences between their powers and the deity of depths, oceans. Darkness, stars, travel, guidance, and disaster. Did Nightwalkers bear the lineage of Storm God? That would certainly explain a lot. Master Jet, meanwhile, continued.
The scions of the House of Night allow naval convoys to reach their destinations, which is both a blessing and a curse. The problem with that situation is that while there are more Nightwalkers than there are descendants of the other 2 great clans, their number is still limited. And so, the number of convoys we can operate simultaneously is limited as well.
She sighed.
We can only evacuate people across water, By our calculations, it will take at least 2 years to evacuate the population of Antarctica that way. That is even if we commit the bulk of our navy to the operation. However,
Her voice grew dim.
the chain reaction is going to start in a few months at most. It won't be too severe at the beginning, but quickly ramp up, drowning the entire archipelago in nightmare creatures.
Sunny remained silent for a bit, then asked, "So what is going to happen?" Master Jet finished her coffee and offered him a smile.
Well, the government is going to transfer a very substantial part of its forces to Antarctica. Pretty much everyone who can be spared without leaving the rest of humanity completely defenseless will be transferred to the expeditionary force. They will try to stall the nightmare creatures for as long as possible to allow as many people as we can save to escape. Oh, also, I will be on one of the first ships myself.
Sunny looked away, not knowing what to say. Master Jet herself had judged that many of those who were going to take part in the evacuation would not be coming back. Still, she was Soul Reaper Jet, was she not? Surely, she of all people was going to be okay. Master Jet sighed, then looked around once again. Then she said calmly,
Of course, that will never be enough. In a couple of months, the government will announce a voluntary mobilization, both among the awakened and among mundane humans. Many people will answer the call, while most will not. As I've said, the loss of Antarctica is not a world-ending event. Dying there is not really worth it.
Sunny gritted his teeth.
So why are you going? With your position, I am sure that you could have chosen to stay behind. Did you let the propaganda get to your head? Honor, duty, and sacrifice. Do you actually believe in that crap?
Soul Reaper laughed.
No, I am as cynical as you, Sunny. However, I have my own reasons.
She lingered for a few moments, and then added in a suddenly serious tone.
And I think that you might understand my reasoning very well. We've known each other for a while, Sunny, and I always shied away from giving you the recruitment speech. However, times have changed. So, tomorrow, when the representative of Valor tries to invite you into their great and illustrious clan, I want you to refuse.
She leaned forward, looked him in the eyes, and added,
Instead, I want you to leave everything behind, enlist, and come with me.
Master Jet just laid a heavy choice on Sunny, and the road ahead only gets harder. Hit like on this episode so more people can find the story and follow where it leads next. It was hard not to get swept up in Master's Jet cool presence. However, Sunny was not so easy to sway. He held her gaze for a few moments, then turned away. His expression grew somber.
You just spent a lot of time convincing me that losing Antarctica would not cause irreparable damage to humanity, and that most of those who go there would end up dead. And now, you suddenly want me to go as well. Why would I?
Sure, fighting a noble and glorious war against the nightmare creatures sounded exciting, but Sunny was not an inexperienced kid anymore. He knew the price of glory all too well. To him, war casualties were not an abstract concept, but instead a very familiar and grim reality. He was not arrogant and ignorant enough to consider himself immune to death. Master Jet leaned back.
Don't you want to defend your fellow humans?
Sunny shrugged.
Don't get me wrong, I really want all those people in Antarctica to survive. However, none of them helped me when I was starving to death in the outskirts. None of them were there when I was drowning in my own blood on the forgotten shore. The government didn't do crap to uplift me either.
He frowned and then added,
In fact, one might argue that the government not only abandoned me entirely, but even did everything in its power to make sure that I die swiftly after being used up to bring it a tiny bit of benefit, like my parents did. But despite all that, I survived and managed to build a decent life for myself. And now that I finally have something good going for me, you want me to throw it all away and go risk my life to maybe save a bunch of strangers?
Master Jet sighed.
I get it, trust me, I do, but...
Sunny raised his eyebrows.
But what? I do believe that you get it. You are from the outskirts yourself, after all. Maybe your life there was not as bad as mine, but it wouldn't have been too different. So why are you going to Antarctica?
She lingered for a few moments, then looked away.
I guess it's hard to explain. Honor, duty, sacrifice. You're right, those words don't mean much to me. Working for the government is a means to an end. However, I do work for the government, and I take pride in my work.
Soul Reaper studied the visitors of the cafeteria with her icy blue eyes, then glanced at Sunny.
I might not have a lot of affection for humanity, but maintaining the fragile balance that allows it to exist is something that I chose to make my responsibility, my domain. So, watching Antarctica go up in flames from the sidelines would be against my professional sensibility.
Sunny remained silent for a while, thinking about what she said. He felt that, in a sense, Master Jet was very much like him, too stubborn to give up, unwilling to let the world have its way. However, there was a big difference between them. While Sunny aimed all that spite and resentment at surviving and elevating only himself, she had chosen something much grander as her target. Instead of going it alone, Soul Reaper had decided to tie herself down to a much bigger hole. Was it worth it? He did not know for sure, but felt that it wasn't. People like him and her deserved to be selfish. The world had never treated them well, and so they had no obligation to return the favor. Dying for someone you did not care about was utter foolishness. He looked at her and said dacrely,
But I am not in the same profession as you.
Master Jet smiled.
True, however, I wasn't finished. My work ethic is only part of the reason why I am going to Antarctica. The other is the future.
Sunny raised an eyebrow. The future. She nodded.
Yes, the world is changing, Sunny. What happens in Antarctica might not end humanity or even change it too much, but it will change the awakened. Think about it. With so many of us going, either as part of the initial force or as volunteer reinforcements, the power balance of the awakened society will shift. Thousands will die, but those who survive will grow stronger.
Soul Reaper leaned forward, her voice suddenly intense.
How many will fully saturate their cores? How many will achieve a breakthrough in their combat skill? How many will ascend? There are less than 1,000 masters alive in the world right now. How many will there be after the battle for Antarctica? I'd wager much more than that. How many new saints will emerge? Everything will shift, Sunny. You can either be a part of that shift or be left behind.
Sunny studied her face for a few moments and shrugged. Then he asked in a somber tone,
Are you hoping to become a saint in all the chaos, while all the great clans are looking elsewhere?
Master Jet sighed, then slowly shook her head.
No, not really. You are mistaken if you think that their monopoly on transcendence exists only through preventative measures. Even if you become a saint, they still can and will make you disappear. Plus, entering the third nightmare is not something that can be done in the heat of the moment. If you want to survive, you need years of preparation and an ocean of resources, not to mention a powerful and cohesive cohort. Jumping into a random seed will just get you killed.
Sunny remained silent for a bit, then scowled.
What are the great clans doing about this situation anyway? The House of Night is supplying its navigators for the Navy. Are they going to join the ground forces as well? What about Song and Valor?
Soul Reaper grimaced and shook her head.
No, the great clans are staying clear from the ground operation. For now, maybe they will join eventually, but currently all three are withholding their forces.
His face grew dark.
Why? Isn't protecting human lives the purpose for their existence?
She sighed.
It is, and they are. They just have their own thoughts on what that implies.
Master Jet hesitated for a few moments, and then added.
The great clans have given up on Earth a long time ago, Sunny. Instead of trying to protect humanity's old home from falling apart, they set their gazes at building a new one. They have big plans for the dream realm.
Sunny left the academy with a lot on his mind. As a master and a high-ranking citizen, he had the right to acquire a PTV license and more than enough money to purchase one. However, Sunny had no idea how to control a personal transport vehicle and was too lazy to learn, so he still used public trains to move around the city, around the Northern Quadrant siege capital, paying no attention to the captivated glances people threw at him. He looked into the window as the train slid forward on its magnetic guideway, flying through district after district with incredible speed. The city was a nice enough place, as long as you were not born in the outskirts. Tall buildings burrowed deep underground and rose high into the sky, connected by tunnels and aerial bridges into a complicated maze of graphene composite and reinforced alloy. Here and there, artificial trees and grass broke the white monotony with vibrant shades of green, yellow, orange, and red. Everything seemed clean and bright despite the heavy snowstorms that were prevalent this time of year, not at all like the dirty, dim, poisonous clutter of the outskirts. There were large screens displaying beautiful vistas of breathtaking landscapes that had not existed on planet Earth since centuries ago, and propaganda projections that had been masterfully designed to brighten the mood of the citizens. Most of all, the city seemed full of life. Endless streams of people were crowding the crosswalks, with a rare PTV or two appearing from time to time. Millions, hundreds of millions of humans called this place their home. Only here, protected by the colossal outer barriers and protective air filtration systems, as well as powerful awakened, could they survive and thrive. It was strange to imagine that many similar human shelters in Antarctica were going to be abandoned and destroyed by the endless tide of nightmare creatures very soon. Sonny had seen the panic and mayhem that an unexpected manifestation of a gate could cause. However, his imagination failed when he tried to envision what would the same disaster, but magnified hundredfold, look like. All he could picture was the horde of abominations that the Dreamer army had faced under the Crimson Spire suddenly appearing on these peaceful streets. Already, that image made him shudder. However, he still stood by his words. He did not owe these people anything. Sure, if a gate opened right in front of him, Sonny would have been inclined to fight and buy the civilians time to run away. This was just human nature. But he was not going to go out of his way and seek death just to fulfill some abstract obligation. No one had helped when he had been desperate for help. He had survived despite humanity, not because of it, and he would continue to put himself first. Most likely, Sonny would have lied if he said that Master Jet did not put a seed of doubt in his heart. Sure, the expedition to Antarctica seemed like a suicidal exercise in futility, but she was right. Those who survived that ordeal were going to grow much stronger. Although Sonny would not be getting any shadow fragments from the hordes of dormant and awakened abominations that were going to flood the southern quadrant soon, he could still collect plenty of soul shards and memories. Maybe even echoes. There would be more than enough of fallen nightmare creatures roaming Antarctica as well. However, he also did not believe in the government's ability to accurately predict what would happen there. They seemed to think that only lower category gates would appear during the chain reaction, but was that assessment right? Who could say with certainty that another category 5 gate would not manifest itself instead? The last time it happened, the likes of Immortal Flame and Smile of Heaven perished in the fight. Could Sonny guarantee that he would fare any better? No, he definitely could not. In the end, it all came down to a simple choice that depended on tomorrow's negotiations. If all went well, Sonny would regain the ability to enter the dream realm. There, he would be able to achieve much better results than the expedition to Antarctica could ever provide, and with much less risk. More than that, he could even pledge allegiance to the illustrious clan Valor. By now, he had more than enough value to negotiate a supremely lucrative deal. With their training, support, and resources, becoming a Titan would not be out of the realm of possibility. The barrier that stood between him and transcendence would instantly disappear, too. Instead, he would be in the best position possible to attempt conquering the third nightmare. Perhaps he would even be able to enhance his understanding of sorcery by leaps and bounds. Valor was widely renowned for creating incredible memories. After all, he had also seen how proficient the representatives of the Great Clan were in using runic sorcery back in the Night Temple. There was so much knowledge that they possessed, so much he could learn from them. As for the fact that the great clans seemed to be preparing to abandon Earth in favor of the Dream Realm, were they even wrong? Sonny still remembered the conversation he had had with Effie in the ruined cathedral of the Dark City. She, too, believed that the waking world was dying and that the Dream Realm could become humanity's salvation. Her argument was dreadful but compelling. In any case, if something went wrong, he would always be able to leave Clan Valor behind. Pledges of allegiance did not mean anything to Sonny after all, as a person who abhorred the word honor. He was more than willing to betray any promise he made as long as it suited him. Deserting a great clan would probably not be easy, but by then he was going to be powerful enough to manage. So, if negotiations went well, he had no reason to do something as stupid as following Master Jet to Antarctica. If they went poorly, however, that would be pretty much his only choice. That was why Sonny had not given Soul Reaper a definitive answer. She did not ask for one anyway. Master Jet had just told him to think about her offer and inform her of his decision during the next 2 months. As the train approached the terrace distinct, Sonny sighed and headed for the exit.
My head hurts. Why did all of it have to happen on the day of my first lecture? That's too much excitement for one day.
Worse still, tomorrow promised to be even more exciting. Sonny continued to ponder as he walked from the train station to his home. Once there, he opened the door and walked inside, then sat down in the living room and stared at the wall for a while.
Oh, this is not good.
Right now, he was supposed to be mentally preparing for tomorrow's meeting with the representative of Valor. Antarctica or not, these negotiations had the potential to decide the course of his life, maybe even whether or not he was going to live at all. The sudden revelation of the impending disaster discombobulated him, making it hard to concentrate on the immediate issue. Facing the emissary of Valor was going to be a delicate dance. Sonny was helped by the fact that he had never intended to set Mordred free. However, he was not entirely innocent, either. After all, he had sided against Weld and Pierce, even slaying one of the 2 knights of the great clan with his own 2 hands. Not to mention that Mordred had followed him into the nightmare and ascended. Sonny had many things to hide, but could not lie, even though he was confident in his ability to twist the truth with misleading answers. The negotiations could still derail really quickly.
Whatever, as if anyone would believe that an awakened like me was able to kill one of the famed Knights of Valor.
Now that Sonny had become a master himself, he lost most of his ability to feign weakness. However, no one but his closest friends knew how powerful he really was, and especially had been. This was another fact that played to his advantage.
It all depends on the emissary and how they conduct themselves.
If Valor sent someone cavalier and arrogant, Sonny would be able to dance circles around them. He had plenty of practice dealing with haughty individuals after all. If they sent someone smart, however, that could be a problem. Sonny stared at his shad, then sighed and stood up. He really hoped that everything would go smoothly tomorrow, but it paid to be prepared. Worst case scenario, he was going to have to join the Firekeepers in their Dream Realm exile for a while. So, unless he wanted to return to a monotonous diet of eating nothing but monster meat, it was best to prepare a few things. Soon, a big metal chest appeared in front of him, then opened its heavy lid, revealing rows of massive triangular fangs. Covetous Coffer had changed after the second nightmare as well. The Mendacious Coffer enchantment allowed it to mimic the form of any inanimate object, but was limited by Sonny's core capacity. Now that he was an ascended, capacity of his cores increased tremendously, so there was a lot of options. Sonny had experimented with the form of the coffer a lot in the past 6 months. He had made it into all kinds of things, from alloy safes to leather armchairs and sleeping pods. He had even made it into a refrigerator once. However, after having fun with it for a bit, Sonny came to the conclusion that not all forms suited the memory well. Items that already had the function of storing things worked the best. He ended up simply turning it into a large chest of reinforced alloy. Now that the covetous coffer had grown up, its size and strength were enough to make the lurid trunk enchantment truly dangerous. If before the small box could only bite off a few fingers, now it could swallow a potential thief whole. The capacious chest enchantment had grown stronger, as well, vastly increasing the coffer's storage capacity. Now, it could store an entire room's worth of items. The locomotive chiffonier, meanwhile, did not change a lot, but due to its new size, the chest could move around much faster. In fact, the coffer was now large enough for Sonny to sit on top of it, using the memory as a bizarre mount. In that regard, It was not too different from the original Mordant Mimic, whom Sunny had ridden all the way down to the Ebony Tower once. Not that he wanted to repeat the experience. And speaking of mounts, if there was one thing that had really frustrated Sunny in the past few months, it was that he had no opportunity to learn how to properly ride Nightmare. He had even ordered a custom-made saddle from an exclusive leatherwork boutique. The mundane professionals working there often received commissions to create various harnesses for echoes of all shapes, so they were used to strange requests. And since only wealthy awakened possessed echoes, their prices weren't cheap. The cost only ballooned when Sunny had to sacrifice a precious soul shard to turn the saddle into a memory. And yet, it had all been to no avail. Sunny was unable to travel to the dream realm, and summoning the dreadful steed to move around the city would not have been too convenient. Even if he did not mind attracting the wrong kinds of attention, there surely were laws and regulations in place to prevent exactly that. It was not all bad, though, as a terror. Nightmare possessed an ability similar to that of a tyrant. In his case, the stallion accumulated literal nightmares instead of corporeal minions, and the more of them he ruled, the more his power grew. Eventually, the Dark Destrier was supposed to unlock his final ability, Dream Curse, by gathering an army of 1,000 nightmares. Sunny had not known where to find these phantasms or how to create them, but the 6 months of idleness allowed him to figure it out. There were two ways. Nightmare could either create his dream minions or subjugate them. Creating one was not easy. First, the black steed had to sow a seed of terror into an enemy's soul. If the enemy escaped and the seed took root, they would be haunted by the memories of the dreadful Destrier and see him in their dreams. The weaker the will of the victim was, the more chances there were for the nightmare to grow and become more and more potent. However, a brave person would cause the seed to wither and die. Eventually, if the nightmare fully formed, the stallion would be able to use his Dreamwalker attribute to harvest it. The second way was also troublesome. The black steed could travel into the dreams of powerful beings and subjugate their own nightmares. In the waking world, that meant ascended. However, that task was not easy. The more powerful the dreamer, the more powerful the nightmares haunting them were. To subjugate such a nightmare, the shadow had to defeat it in battle inside the dream. Nightmare had returned severely wounded more than once from such battles. Still, he managed to gather several minions that way. Neither of them faced any real enemies since returning to the waking world, so for now there was no other option. Sunny gathered a bunch of supplies and stored them in the covetous coffer, then dismissed the memory and sighed. Accumulating 1,000 nightmares for his shadow was not going to be easy. Maybe he should have accompanied the black steed into other people's dreams. However, there were enough things haunting him already. He did not need to experience someone else's fears as well. Getting close to sleeping masters was also rather perilous. At that moment, one of his shadows noticed a familiar figure walking toward the door. Sunny checked the time and smiled.
Oh, she's already here. My favorite pupil is nothing if not punctual.
In the underground dojo beneath Sunny's home, steel was ringing against steel. Rain was moving with a speed and precision unusual for a mundane girl of her age. Her nascent battle style was grounded, calculated, and sharp, merging steady defense with unexpected and explosive attacks. The heavy training blade sang in her hands, cutting the air as if it possessed an actual edge. The awkwardness of youth was almost gone from her body, ceding to the promise of maturity. She was much more fit and in charge of her physicality, as well, fighting with confidence and poise that would have left most of her privileged classmates consumed by envy. As much as Sunny wanted to, he could not boast that her progress was all thanks to him. Currently, he was facing his little sister, deflecting her blows with one hand while keeping another in his pocket. No matter what Rain did, the soft alloy stick he was holding seemed to be impenetrable, inevitable, and unbreakable. All her attacks crashed and shattered against it, and all her defenses seemed useless against her tutor's lazy movements. Time after time, the stick suddenly shot forward and hit her on the shoulder, bounced off of her forehead or stung her hands. Nevertheless, the girl did not allow herself to get frustrated and continued to exert herself without losing concentration. It was that cool mind and meticulous discipline that had allowed Rain to advance so fast. Not bad. Sunny deflected another swift attack, stepped forward, and poked the girl in the chest with the tip of his stick.
Here you're dead again. I'm tired of fighting a corpse. Let's stop.
Rain jumped back and grew still, breathing heavily as drops of sweat rolled down her pale face. She did not, however, lower her blade. Sunny had taught her the peril of lowering one's guard a long time ago. Those bruises took a long time to heal. He grinned, then scratched his back with the stick and offered her the endless spring. After the girl was done quenching her thirst, Sunny sat down on the floor and asked in a commanding tone, "Where did I hit you?" Rain sat down too and answered steadily,
Head, right shoulder, right hand, left forearm, chest, right thigh, left shoulder, head, neck, left shoulder, left hand, chest, head, chest.
He smiled with satisfaction.
When did I put my hand in the pocket?
She frowned.
After hitting me on the thigh for the first time.
Sunny nodded.
In which direction was I looking 2 hits before that?
Rain gritted her teeth. Up, you were rolling your eyes. He chuckled.
Good, your awareness is sufficient for that stage.
The young girl threw a menacing look at him, then turned away. After a few moments, she sighed and suddenly asked, "Sunny, am I any good?" Sunny hesitated, then shrugged. "You're doing all right." Rain remained silent for a while.
But not as good as you were, right?
That caused Sunny to laugh.
No, you are way better than I was. I had not even seen a sword before my first nightmare, let alone held one. In fact, when I got a chance to arm myself with a sword there, I chose to drop it because it was too heavy.
Rain turned to him with surprise. "What? Then how did you survive?" Sunny thought for a bit, then shrugged.
Well, I strangled one enemy with a chain, poisoned 2 more, fed the last one to a nightmare creature, and then simply got lucky. I guess you can say that I just survived out of spite.
He hesitated and then added,
Actually, that is a very important lesson. I've told you before, sure, knowing how to wield a weapon is important, but having a mind that is more dangerous than a weapon is paramount. The world is a vicious place, Rain. You have to be vicious too, to survive.
Rain was going to turn 16 in a few months. In fact, she would probably celebrate her birthday not long after the first gates start opening in Antarctica. After that, his little sister would be vulnerable to the nightmare spell as well. That was another factor he had to consider. Leaving with Master Jet meant leaving Rain too. Granted, he had already taught her most of what he could without resorting to more drastic measures. Rain was more prepared to face the first nightmare than he had ever been, or most people even. Very few kids ever received the chance to be trained by an Ascended, let alone one with as much battle experience as Sunny or possessed as much talent as Rain. He glanced at her, lingered for a moment, and then asked, "Do you want to be an awakened?" The girl hesitated for a long time, then slowly shook her head, surprising him.
No, I don't know. I really want to be able to protect my family, but I don't want to be away from them. Or die. I had an older brother, you know.
Sunny almost flinched, but forced himself to remain still. An expression of mild curiosity appeared on his face. "Oh." Rain remained silent for a bit, then sighed.
My mom and dad had a son before adopting me. He got infected by the spell and died. I don't think they'll be able to bear it if I die, too.
Sunny looked away. A few moments later, he said, "Sorry to hear that." The girl shrugged, then looked at him with a frown.
What is up with you today, anyway? You're all serious.
Sunny smiled.
Well, I got an important day tomorrow. Besides, I gave my first lecture today. Shaping young minds is a very serious matter.
Rain giggled with vindication.
Ah, so more people are going to suffer just like me. That makes me feel better.
She smiled, then patted him on the shoulder.
That's good. I thought you were still moping around because Effie is not around that much anymore.
Sunny looked at her with outrage. Moping around? I never moped around. To be honest, He did feel a bit sad that his friends were out and about living their lives. The house seemed awfully quiet now that the boisterous huntress was gone most days. After the four of them had returned from the second nightmare, Effie got a bit drunk on having a healthy body. She greedily dove into all the things she never had a chance to do growing up as a disabled person, since Cassie was indisposed and Sonny did not want to show his face in public. The government was very clingy in making her attend all kinds of events as well. Now, the huntress only returned home once every week or two and then disappeared the next day again. Kai got it even worse. Due to the nature of his new ability, he could not perform music anymore. It would have been strange to sing to crowds of people, knowing that his voice could literally mesmerize them. The famous idol group Knight and Gale announced their retirement, with Gale launching a very successful solo career and Kai transitioning to acting for the betterment of humanity as an ascended. At least that was how his agency spun his sudden decision. Now, the government paraded Kai around like a paragon of the human race. Cassie, Effie, and he had already been venerated as heroes after the Forgotten Shore, but after becoming masters at such a young age, their celebrity rose a whole another level. So, he did not have a lot of free time either. Both Effie and Kai were in a strange position. They had nothing to do with the events of the Night Temple, but also could not, and would not, move on with their lives until Sonny and Cassie resolved their issues with Clan Valor. In truth, Sonny himself had told them to stay away from him for now. Still, he missed their company.
That is all right. This whole mess will end tomorrow one way or another.
He sighed and then turned to Rain.
You did well today, keep it up. Now go home before your parents call me again. The last time they very politely tried to explain to me that you have homework to do and I was keeping you too long was very awkward for all of us, you know.
Rain laughed, then stood up and headed for the elevator.
All right, but next time we spar, I am going to get you at least once. You'll see.
Soon she was gone, leaving him alone in the dimly lit dojo. Sonny sighed and looked at his shadows. After a while, he said quietly,
Until Rain is on Earth, those damned sovereigns better not leave Earth behind. Otherwise, the great clans and I are going to have a problem.
The next morning, Sonny approached the massive red gates of the academy and stood there for a few moments, looking at the countless thousands of candles that burned in front of the deep moat surrounding it. Their flames swayed and shone through the falling snow, turning into a beautiful sea of orange radiance. Back when the Dreamer army had suddenly returned from the Forgotten Shore, rising a storm with their unexpected resurrection. People started placing these candles in front of the academy for the one who had stayed behind, the last daughter of the immortal flame clan Changing Star. Some believed that Nephi's would not die until at least one candle continued to burn. As long as it burned, the immortal flame would not be extinguished. Now, 2 years later, the number of candles had not diminished one bit. In fact, there were more of them than ever. Changing Star's legend had not only remained alive, but continued to grow and spread. At first, the candles might have been just a desperate gesture by those who hoped against all odds that she would remain alive. But with each day that Nephi somehow defied death and continued to persevere alone in the cursed darkness of the dream realm, her fame and influence rose. No one could explain how she was managing to survive in the desolate, lightless abyss of the Forgotten Shore, but she undoubtedly had not succumbed to its indescribable horrors. Sonny knew it better than anyone, but others knew as well. The government was not shy about fanning the flames of the misguided fervor and used Nephi's to fuel the propaganda machine, painting her as the symbol of the noble and unbreakable spirit of humanity. It was easy for them to confirm that Changing Star still lived, after all. Unlike those who turned hollow, someone like her showed signs of brain activity similar to that of a dreaming person. So, they did not even have to invent false proof. By now, there were at least 100,000 burning candles placed in front of the academy, where she slept in a heavily protected underground chamber. Sonny sighed, then shifted his gaze to a delicate silhouette kneeling in front of the candles. Cassie lit one of her own, waited until some wax melted and flowed to the ground, then placed the candle near others and stood up. She was wearing civilian clothes. Her attire was tidy and mundane. But despite that, No one could mistake her for an ordinary person. The solemn and otherworldly beauty of the blind girl surrounded her like an invisible barrier, making a few people who came to light their own candles stay away, looking at her with stunned reverence. Not paying them any attention, Sonny scowled a little and walked other. As he approached, it seemed as though the shadows of the burning candles grew a little deeper.
Welcome back to the real world. When did you arrive?
Cassie lingered for a moment, then turned to him and smiled a little.
Just a few minutes ago, my tether is here in the academy.
Sonny nodded. As masters, they were able to travel to the dream realm physically and at will. Once there, they were still bound to a gateway anchor and had to use it to return to the real world. However, at the same time as their connection to the dream realm had grown stronger, their connection to the waking world had become a little less absolute. To return, each ascended had to create a tether, an intangible mark that served as their beacon on the return journey. They would appear at the spot where their tether was placed. Creating or moving a tether was not too hard, but required some time. Sonny's own was situated in the dojo below his home, but Cassie had to choose where to place hers more carefully. Ambushing a master at the moment of their return was the best way to catch them in their weakest state. So, the supremely defended academy was a good choice. He looked at Cassie with some concern, then asked, How have you been?" The young woman smiled.
Not too bad. We've been busy these last 6 months, exploring the ivory tower, restoring the flying ship to its true glory. Now that I had studied it at its prime, there is a lot more we can do.
Sonny knew that Cassie had spent a lot of time learning from Noctis about his remarkable ship. It seemed that she was putting these lessons to good use. His face darkened a little.
Are you still planning to take it over the Hollow Mountains?
The blind girl sighed.
Yes, maybe. The fire keepers are still too weak to make that journey, but perhaps today's negotiations will change things. Clan Valor knows more about the Hollow Mountains than anyone else, after all.
Sonny scoffed.
And you think they will just share that knowledge with you?
Cassie lingered for a second, then weakly shrugged.
Why not? Now that Saint Cormac is dead, someone has to continue his mission.
She hesitated for a bit and asked,
If we do go, will you come with us?
Sonny laughed.
I don't know, gods. Why does everyone suddenly want me to come with them these days?
Cassie faced him and remained silent for a few moments. Then she simply said, Because you are strong. Sonny looked at her with a faint smile, then turned away.
I guess I am. Anyway, are you ready for the negotiations? Things can go really bad for us, you know.
The blind girl nodded and turned her back to the sea of glowing candles. I know. As she said that, a luxurious black PTV appeared in view, stopping some distance away. Its door slid open, and the representative of the great clan Valor stepped out onto the pavement. When Sonny saw who it was, his face fell. He gritted his teeth. Crap. Of all people, why did it have to be her? The young woman that exited the PTV looked sharp in a perfectly tailored, elegant business suit. It was entirely black with buttons and cufflinks forged out of silver steel. Her hands were protected from the cold by leather gloves, and her raven black hair moved slightly in the wind. With alabaster skin and a slender figure, the young woman looked both beautiful and daunting. She resembled a lethal blade. And that impression was only exacerbated by the cold gaze of her striking, strange, vermilion eyes. Morgan of Valor had come to represent her clan herself. Sonny silently cursed. This was, more or less, the worst-case scenario. Now that a direct descendant of Anvil of Valor appeared to conduct the negotiations in person, his chances of fooling anyone dropped significantly. Not to mention that his heart suddenly ached, as if remembering the pain of being ripped out of his chest by Morgan's slender hand. Even though that unfortunate incident had happened in the illusory dreamscape. The memory of pain was very real, much worse than that. Sonny couldn't help but shiver when he realized how strongly Morgan resembled her older brother. The resemblance was almost uncanny. It was as though he was staring at a slightly younger female version of Mordred. That made him deeply uncomfortable. Morgan looked up at the crushing mass of the academy's gates, then glanced at the sea of candles with curiosity and walked forward, stopping in front of Sunny and Cassie. She offered them a polite smile and said in her low, raspy voice,
Master Sunless, you look familiar. Have we met before?
If Sunny was in a bad mood before, now it turned really vile. Of all the questions out there, why did she have to ask that one? He hesitated for a moment, then answered indifferently.
Face to face. I once saw you from afar during one of the dream tournaments. I doubt you got a good look at me, though.
He also saw her up close, but she did not need to know that. Morgan seemingly lost interest and turned to Cassie.
Song of the Fallen, it's an honor to meet you.
Although her tone was not too deferential, she was treating the blind girl with a bit of respect. Anyone with a true name deserved acknowledgement, even from a scion of a great clan. Cassie nodded. Master Morgan. The daughter of Valor smiled.
Oh, so I don't need to introduce myself.
With that, she turned away and looked at the red gates of the academy again. By now, the massive drawbridge had already started to move, slowly lowering itself to allow them entry. Morgan's face became a little wistful.
This is the Awakened Academy, then? I've always wanted to attend. Sadly, that was never in the cards for me.
Sunny glanced at her with a bit of confusion. Why not? The young woman lingered for a moment, then looked at him with a disturbingly familiar, pleasant smile.
I've been trained by the best of the best since I was a child. There was nothing the Academy could offer me that I did not already have. Spending time here would have just been wasteful.
She paused for a moment and sighed slightly.
Still, I used to love dramas and webtoons about the Academy. It's a shame.
Morgan watched as the heavy metal bridge fell into the special grooves in the ground and grew still after a series of loud clicks. Then, she looked at Sunny and asked,
Would you mind giving me a small tour? I hear that you are a lecturer now.
Of all the possible ways he had imagined the negotiations to start, this was not one of them. Sunny hesitated, then shrugged. Yeah, sure. Why not? Follow me. The academy was something of a city within a city. It was self-sufficient and well-protected. The whole complex was surrounded by a deep moat and a wall of armored alloy that was tall and durable enough to slow down an attacking titan. Here and there, automated turrets of the air protection dome could be seen, their large-caliber barrels aimed at the sky. Sunny, Cassie, and Morgan of Valor walked for a few minutes before approaching a low, modern building with white walls. He pointed at it and said with little enthusiasm in his voice,
This is the sleeper compound. Most of it is underground, of course. Usually there is a lot of activity inside and around it, but this soon after the solstice, there are no sleepers around. The first batch is going to be inducted in a week or two.
When he was done talking, Cassie added,
There are a few private academies here and there, but only one Awakened Academy. The government brings all willing sleepers to this compound, no matter what quadrant they are from. On an average year, around 1,000 young men and women prepare for their first venture into the dream realm here.
Morgan studied the sleeper compound for a bit, then asked with a smile,
So, is it as lively and boisterous as it is portrayed in the dramas? Do sleepers really get to all kinds of shenanigans, develop lifelong friendships and bitter rivalries, and go on risky adventures?
Her raspy voice sounded genuinely curious. Sunny laughed dryly.
I don't know. We are the last two people you should be asking that, honestly. Not only did we spend only a month here, we were also both at the absolute bottom of the rankings. Everyone treated us as walking corpses.
Morgan looked at him, then said,
And yet here you are, only 3 years later, both alive and ascended.
He glanced at Cassie, then grinned.
Yes, life can be funny that way sometimes.
They proceeded to walk around the academy for some time. Since Sunny knew it much better than Cassie due to his research assistant position, he did most of the talking. He showed Morgan around, explaining the purpose of various compounds and buildings, while she listened with interest and asked questions from time to time. All in all, Morgan of Valor seemed really friendly. That was the danger of it, however. Sonny did not miss the fact that the more he talked, the more information about himself he was giving away, and the harder it was to keep his guard up. Although the daughter of the great clan seemed pleasant and well-meaning, the truth of it was that every one of her words was calculated and served a purpose. His worst fears were coming true. The emissary Clan Valor sent was not some arrogant, cavalier fool. Instead, they sent a lethal princess with eyes so sharp that her gaze could almost cut skin, although Morgan had not made it apparent. The negotiations had already started. They were walking past a painfully familiar building when the realization that the complicated dance of negotiating with the great clan had already begun hit him. As his face grew a little dim, Sonny lingered for a moment and then gestured at the building.
This is the hospital complex of the Academy. It is one of the best medical institutions humanity has to offer, combining state-of-the-art tech with ingenious spell tech, as well as employing many awakened with actual healing aspects. This is also where sleepers enter the sleeping pods to venture into the dream realm. I myself spent about a year in one of them.
He paused and then added,
This is where many of the hollow are kept as well.
Morgan looked at the alloy walls of the complex. A few moments later, she suddenly asked,
This is also where Changing Star of the Immortal Flame clan is currently being kept, isn't it?
Did Sonny imagine it, or was her voice suddenly a bit more cutting? He frowned.
She is not hollow, but yes. Oh, by the way, can we cut the crap?
Morgan looked at him with a cold smile. What do you mean? Sonny met her intimidating gaze without flinching. If he wanted, his dark eyes could be as cold and oppressive as hers. In fact, the complete absence of fear or apprehension in their black depths was perhaps more frightening.
I doubt that you are really interested in sightseeing. Let's not waste time.
Morgan studied him for a moment, then chuckled.
As you wish, Master Sunless. Let us get the formalities out of the way first then.
She pierced him with a sharp gaze and asked,
Did you come to the Night Temple with the intent to set its prisoner free?
Sonny knew that the daughter of Valor had to have plenty of memories on her to discern whether the answers provided to her were true or not. Not that he could lie even if he wanted to. He looked at her with a deep scowl and uttered through gritted teeth,
Of course not. If I knew, I would have stayed as far away from your damned citadel as possible. I didn't even know that it was a prison, let alone had plans of breaking the bastard free.
Morgan lingered for a moment, then turned to Cassie. What about you, Song of the Fallen? The blind girl's face grew dark.
You have no reason to trust our motives, true, but at least don't disrespect our intelligence. If we really wanted to set that monster free, we would have found a way to do so without getting stuck inside the trap with him, don't you think? Both Sonny and I only escaped that disaster alive because of Saint Tyrus. If she had not happened to be nearby, we'd be dead. Or worse.
Morgan tilted her head a little, then suddenly smiled.
All right, I believe you, still, intentional or not, the two of you caused great harm to Clan Valor.
Sonny inwardly sighed. Just like that, the hardest part of the negotiation seemed to be over. Now the long and arduous process of bargaining was about to begin. The end result was still very much unclear. Sonny and Cassie had to withstand the pressure and exert some in return. Aside from deciding their own fates, they also had to secure the release of the captured fire keepers, as well as negotiate other favorable terms. That was not going to be easy. Especially against someone like Morgan. The most important part was to make sure that they would be the ones setting the tone and cadence of the negotiation, as opposed to following what their opponent said. They had to go on the offensive. He forced out a confident smile.
Can we not do that? Assigning blame is fun and all, but let's be honest. Clan Valor needs us more than we need Clan Valor.
Morgan raised an eyebrow. Do we? What makes you say that? Sonny shrugged.
We might not have helped that maniac escape, but that doesn't mean that he did not have help, or that he is not trying to find help as we speak. In fact, he might be having an identical negotiation with one of your enemies right now. He doesn't have 50 of the most talented awakened of this generation backing him, though.
Morgan's eyes grew even colder than before, making him shiver a little.
Oh, what do you think about that Song of the Fallen?
She turned to Cassie, but strangely, the blind girl was not there. At some point, she seemed to have fallen behind. Cassie was standing a few meters away from them, still facing the hospital complex. She was as pale as a ghost. As a dark premonition suddenly grasped his heart, Sonny quickly stepped toward her and asked, his voice ringing with tension. "Cassie, what is it? What's wrong?" The blind girl remained silent for a few moments. Her hands suddenly moved, as if trying to find the pommel of the quiet dancer. Then, still facing the hospital, she opened her mouth and whispered, "Fire." In the next moment, the ground beneath their feet quaked. Deep underground, in a heavily protected room, a sleeping pod was glowing softly in the darkness. Inside, a young woman with silver hair slept, her face pale and still. Then, however, her eyes suddenly began to move beneath the eyelids, as if she was experiencing a terrible nightmare. A strange heat suffused the air. A split second later, something flashed. The room was instantly engulfed in furious flames. The armored door flew off its hinges and melted in the air. Turning into a spray of liquid metal, the reinforced alloy walls cracked. The sleeping pod was violently torn to pieces. The force of the explosion was so dreadful that a destructive shockwave rolled through the whole level, causing incredible damage. Loud alarms screamed, and as the lights went off, emergency lamps ignited, drowning the burning corridors in a dim red glare. That light was almost instantly outshined by the angry glow of the spreading fire, however. In just a couple of seconds, the most protected level of the hospital complex was utterly devastated. A sea of white flame was spreading across the devastated underground level, hungrily devouring everything it could touch. Darkness, the red glare of the emergency lamps, and the searing white radiance mixed together, creating a hectic atmosphere of chaos and mayhem. Dust and smoke suffused the scorching air. Soon, the fire suppression systems came online, drowning the burning corridors in water and film-forming foam. The flames slowed down but did not retreat. Instead, clouds of boiling steam flooded the underground level, reducing the already abysmal visibility even further. The alarms continued to scream, summoning the security forces of the academy to the site of the explosion. And at the center of it all, a radiant figure slowly rose from the white flames, wreathed in blinding light. The flame ghost, or whatever the being was, seemed beautiful and pure, as if untouched by the imperfections of the world. It possessed the graceful silhouette of a slender young woman, but also seemed completely, utterly inhuman. As fire swirled around the figure without causing it any harm, the radiant creature slowly looked around as if disoriented. Then it took an unsteady step forward. At that point, more of the automated systems of the hospital complex finally activated. A cracked alloy plate shot down from the ceiling, and a compact security turret deployed itself from a hidden nest. Despite the low visibility and the damaged status of many of the cameras and sensors installed in the ravaged room, it received enough telemetry to identify the presence of a dangerous and unidentified being. It only took the turret a split second to take aim. The radiant figure sharply turned its head and stared at the twin barrels, confused. A moment later, the turret roared, spitting a stream of hundreds of high-caliber rounds at the intruder. Each was powerful enough to pierce an armored vehicle clean through. None of them managed to wound the fire-wreathed apparition, however. The white flames suddenly surged, wrapping around the radiant being like an armor. The tungsten bullets fruitlessly ricocheted off the creature's naked skin, melting as they hit the walls. Being swayed and then threw a hand up. In the next moment, a sliver of fire separated from the blaze, streaked through the air and hit the turret. Another explosion rattled the complex. The turret was obliterated in an instant, and the section of the ceiling around it completely disappeared, revealing the torn lattice of reinforced alloy above. Different security measures were already deploying, however. More importantly, the awakened charged with defending the hospital had already arrived. Two teams of experienced warriors appeared from both sides of the level, closing in on the epicenter of the explosion with speed. Every member was clad in heavily enchanted armor and wielded powerful memory weapons. Before the radiant figure could react, a silver javelin hit it in the back, biting deep before melting and disintegrating in a rain of sparks. A warrior in polished plate armor appeared nearby, delivering a crushing downward blow of his battle axe. It did not matter. A moment after the silver javelin disappeared, the deep wound on the creature's back closed itself. Instead of being cut by the enchanted battle axe, it simply raised a hand and blocked the crescent blade with its forearm. The sharp edge failed to break the being's skin. Behind the visor of the helmet, the awakened warrior who wielded the axe paled. He had caught a glimpse of the creature's radiant face and felt the immolating wrath and ruthless killing intent burning in its eyes. The radiant figure moved. Grabbing the man by the throat, the steel of his powerful memory armor melted and the flesh beneath it blackened. The warrior screamed. Before he was dealt a mortal wound, however, the creature shifted and threw his body at the advancing security officers of his cohort. There were 13 awakened left to deal with the invader, each an experienced, well-equipped combatant and a master of their craft, but the flame apparition was just too tyrannical. It cut through their ranks as if dealing with mere insects. No amount of skill, no amount of powerful memories and devastating aspect abilities could slow it down, let alone damage it. Faced against such an overwhelming adversary, not even the perfect synergy of the security team could play a role. All the Awakened managed was to cover each other and save their wounded comrades from being killed by the unstoppable monster. Their ability to resist, however, was running out. Soon. They were going to start dying. What was worse, the whole battle only took a dozen seconds. That was not nearly enough time for reinforcements to arrive. Or so the desperate Awakened thought, before a swift shadow suddenly appeared in their midst. Sunny rolled out of the shadows and coughed, feeling terrible heat, smoke, and scalding steam assault him. He had used Shadow Step to jump to the underground level of the hospital complex almost as soon as the ground trembled, and only had time to summon the Undying Chain. As the dull steel armor and a couple of other memories finished manifesting themselves, he tried to take in the sight of the devastated interior and shuddered. Sunny breathed a shaken oath.
Gods.
He could not see much, but his shadow sense told a terrifying tale. It seemed as if a series of explosions had rolled through this hallway, cracking the walls, the floor, and the ceiling. There were fires burning all around, despite the streams of water and foam being discharged by a few parts of the fire suppression systems that remained intact. White fire. He also saw the sorry state of the Awakened security team and the radiant figure rampaging between them. From the looks of it, the officers were not going to last long. Sunny roared.
Back a retreat, I'll handle it.
Enhanced by the sonorous enchantment of the extraordinary rock, his voice boomed in the scorching, fire-infused darkness. Not daring to disobey the authority in his order, the Awakened did not make him ask twice. Grabbing their wounded, they hastily disengaged from the combat and ran. At the same time, Sunny dashed forward. His heart was beating like crazy. He stammered in disbelief. Can't be. Can't. Because of all the fire and the damage done to the ventilation system, there was not a lot of oxygen left in the air. It was hard to breathe. Following his will, the shadows suddenly moved and rose from the ground. Instead of touching the incandescent flesh of the radiant being and turning to ash, they swiftly formed a sphere around it and then solidified, turning into a large black orb. That orb was durable enough to hold. White cracks appeared on the surface of the shadow cage, which then exploded into charred pieces. Sunny's eyes widened. He demanded, how? That was an ascended cage. He closed in on the radiant being, allowing the shadow lantern to devour all the light around and submerge the hallway in absolute darkness. For a moment, everything became black, and then two furious white eyes ignited in the blackness. A moment later, a white silhouette became visible again, surrounded by a blinding glow. That glow pushed against the darkness, on the verge of vanquishing it. However, Sunny was already near the radiant figure. He could attack it freely, but he did not. An incandescent hand shot forward, aimed at his throat. Sonny allowed it to grab his forearm instead. A terrible pressure and heat descended on his arm, slowly turning the steel of the undying chain bright orange. He could feel his flesh beneath it starting to burn, but he still did not attack. Instead, Sonny dismissed his helmet and looked straight at the flame apparition. He shouted, "Stop!" His arm was in a sea of blazing pain. Refusing to move, Sonny looked at the beautiful, radiant face in front of him. He called again, "Stop! It's me." Slowly, a vague hint of recognition appeared in the burning white eyes of the radiant monster. The blinding light emanating from her skin dimmed a little. Sonny gritted his teeth. He cried out, "Changing star!" Her hand trembled. The stark inhumanity of her face grew less frightening. The apparition opened its mouth. Her voice was hoarse and awkward, as if covered in rust after not being used for a long, long time. Nephi's faltered, Sonny." He forced out a pale smile. Sonny shouted,
"It's me. Snap out of it, damn it."
The radiant figure, Nephi's, froze. Slowly, the light suffusing her skin dimmed and then became extinguished. The fire devouring the underground level weakened too, allowing the fire suppression systems to douse it. Standing naked amidst the devastation caused by her, Changing Star stared at Sonny with a confused expression. Then she suddenly swayed and fell down. Sonny was barely quick enough to fall to his knees and catch her, holding Neph in his arms. He looked up and noticed the awakened warriors of the security team staring at him in shock from afar. The corner of his mouth twitched.
"Doing fools. Bring me something to cover her up. Don't you know who that is?"
He shook his head, hiding the fact that he was as stunned as they were.
"This is Lady Changing Star, the last daughter of the immortal Flame clan. She's back."
Shock, confusion, joy, reprieve, peace, fear. Sonny sat on a flimsy chair in the waiting area in front of an armored door, shell-shocked by what had happened. What was happening? Failing to envision what was going to happen. His mind was thoroughly scrambled. The waiting area was situated on a different level of the hospital complex. By now, the one devastated by the recent events was already put off. The fires were gone. Teams of the academy staff were sifting through the wreckage, trying to determine the amount of damage done to the structure of the building and various equipment. Those wounded by the explosion and the members of the security team were being hastily treated. It seemed that no lives were in danger, mostly because Sonny had gotten there in time. What exactly had transpired? He had a good idea. Back when Sonny had awakened, he had unconsciously activated his aspect ability before fully regaining his consciousness. As the result, he had come to his senses standing near the sleeping pod instead of inside of it. Shadow Step was a teleportation ability. What if he had gotten a direct damage ability? What if he had been a tyrant at that? This was not an uncommon occurrence among the awakened. Kai had gone through something similar, if Sonny remembered correctly. The same must have happened to Nephi's. It was just that her new ability had turned out to be nothing short of devastating, as expected from the daughter of the immortal Flame clan. After spending a whole year on the Forgotten Shore and then 2 more wandering alone through the dream realm, she must have been extremely disoriented by the return to the waking world. Using her aspect caused her to be in the throes of terrible pain as well. Her flaw was very cruel after all. Perhaps Neph could have regained her composure, but sadly, the automated battle systems of the hospital complex were not sophisticated enough to differentiate between an unknown awakened and an active threat. Even the members of the security team had failed to make the distinction. All they had perceived was that the guarded room where the heir of the immortal Flame slept had been destroyed, and that a seemingly inhuman apparition stood among the fires. In any case, the turret had unleashed a hail of bullets on Nephi's, causing her muddled mind to switch into combat mode. After that, all she saw was a threat. In combat, you had to kill the enemy and prevent the enemy from killing you. Who knew how much damage she would have done if Sonny had not appeared on time? Sonny muttered.
Oh, lucky.
But how was she so powerful? 14 powerful awakened had failed to even slow her down. Not even the cage he had created from shadows could withstand the heat of her flames. Sunny scowled, then grimaced. Cassie was sitting nearby, gripping his hand so hard that even Bone Weave was struggling with the pressure. Both of them were waiting for the doctors examining unconscious Nephis to deliver some news. He patted the blind girl on the shoulder, then said awkwardly, "Sunny ventured, Cass, my hand." She turned to him with a confused expression, then flinched and let go. Cassie offered a quiet apology.
And sorry.
They weren't alone in the waiting area. In fact, a small crowd of people was there with them. Doctors, faculty members, a few disheveled government agents, academy administrators. Everyone was anticipating the news with bated breaths. Their faces were pale, shocked, and excited. Morgan of Valor was there, too, leaning against the wall and typing something in her communicator, her expression calm and nonchalant. She seemed to have understood that their negotiations would have to be postponed. What was the point of negotiating with Sunny and Cassie when everything had just changed? If Valor wanted to recruit the members of Changing Star's cohort and the Fire Keepers, they were going to have to speak with Changing Star herself, most likely, or they would continue their attempts to assassinate her. Provided that Valor had been the great clan responsible for sending Castor, of course. Sunny closed his eyes for a moment. He thought to himself, right, there's also that. The situation had already been incredibly murky and complicated, and with Neff's return, everything was turned upside down and made even more convoluted. Chaos. It was pure chaos. Everything was changing. His own situation had also just turned much more dire for obvious reasons. So, why was he struggling to keep a sincere smile from appearing on his face? Sunny had reasons to be shocked and reasons to be tense, and he was, but most of all, he was happy, incredibly happy. A sense of profound relief, contentment, and joy threatened to drown his ability to think clearly. He felt as though something precious, something vital that he had lost was suddenly returned to him, something that he had been missing. And now that it was back, Sunny felt complete. Sunny grumbled.
What the hell is this nonsense? Since when am I that sentimental?
Although he tried to cover his raw emotions with a veneer of cynicism, in truth, Sunny could pinpoint the exact moment when he had changed. It was when he stepped into the circle of runes inside the Crimson Spire and escaped the Forgotten Shore, leaving Changing Star behind to be devoured by darkness. After that, nothing had been the same. He gritted his teeth. Sunny snapped.
Doesn't matter, take a hold of yourself.
Sunny had the right to be happy that Nephis had returned alive to them. She was his friend after all, much more than that, even. But that did not mean that he could allow himself to relax. Just like her name suggested, Changing Star's return was bound to cause a massive shift. There were many dormant dangers that were going to awake now. More than that, there was a chance that she would become a danger to Sunny herself. He had spent years both hoping for and dreading her return. Sunny muttered.
First things first.
He had to know how Nephis had managed to come back. There were no other gateways in the Forgotten Shore. Had she found one in the Hollow Mountains, or had she gone north, east, or west in search of a less deadly region of the Dream Realm? Not that there would be. No one had ever returned from those parts too, after all. Now that Nephis had lost consciousness, she was bound to be sent back to the Dream Realm. Depending on how dangerous the area surrounding her anchor was, she might not be able to return soon, or at all, although Sunny doubted that the probability of that outcome was very high. The runes shown by the spell also named an Awaken's anchor, since he could see both his own status and Neff's. All he had to do to find out was summon them. Not wasting any more time, Sunny called upon the shimmering runes and concentrated on a certain string of them. A moment later, Neff's status appeared in the air in front of him. Sunny started reading, but then froze. His eyes widened. Sunny breathed.
How is this possible?
But there was no mistake. The runes read,
Name Nephis, true name Changing Star, rank Ascended.
As it turned out, Nephi's had not found a gateway to escape the dream realm and awaken. Instead, after 2 long years of solitude and relentless battles for survival, she had found a seed of nightmare and conquered the second trial of the spell as a sleeper. She had done it alone. At least that was the only way Sunny could explain the runes he was staring at. Ascended, Sunny whispered.
That is impossible.
Surviving the second nightmare was already not easy for a cohort of prepared awakened. More people perished while trying than returned victorious. How could a lone sleeper accomplish the same? No one had done it before. However, no sleeper had been a tyrant before. No sleeper had escaped alive from a battle with a corrupted horror of the depths before. No sleeper had slain a fallen terror before. Nephi's had long established her penchant for accomplishing the impossible. Why was Sunny so surprised that she had done it again? No, he wasn't surprised. He was dismayed. A deep, unsettling emotion nestled in his chest, making his face grow dark and his eyes grow dim. The shadows around him seemed to become deeper. He thought, doesn't matter. That doesn't change anything. The important part is that she is back. Who cares how she returned? But it did matter. To him, it was of paramount importance. His obsession with becoming more powerful than Nephi's was not born out of simple vanity or empty pride. Someone else might have been tempted to chase power just for the sweetness of it, but to Sunny, being anything else than the strongest was an existential threat. As he sat in stunned silence, the sound of hurried footsteps resounded near him. Looking up, Sunny saw Effie pushing her way through the crowd. She was not shy about using her prodigious strength, so people did not really have any choice except to let her pass. Even Instructor Rock, who had appeared 10 minutes earlier, had to politely make way. The big man had been the person to send Nephi's into the dream realm. It was no wonder that he dropped everything to come and wait with the rest of them. Sunny felt a bit touched. The huntress finally reached them and froze for a moment, then asked hoarsely,
Sunny Cassie, is it true? Princess is back.
Sunny looked at her for a bit, then simply nodded. He replied, yes, I passed her to the healers with my own 2 hands. Effie did not move for several seconds. Then a wide grin split her face. It looked as if she was on the verge of starting to howl again.
Hell yes, I never had a doubt. No nightmare creature exists that can keep that pampered psycho down.
Sunny couldn't help but smile a little, infected by her jubilation. Before too long, Kai arrived as well. Usually, his appearance would have caused a stir, but right now, no one paid the former idol any attention. When he received the confirmation, an expression of profound relief appeared on the young man's beautiful face. Kai swayed a little, and then leaned on the wall to keep himself upright.
Gods, thank the gods.
Sunny had not realized it, but his friend must have been blaming himself for leaving Nephi's behind all that time. He was truly too decent of a person for this vile world, and infected by a misguided sense of nobility to boot. Knowing that he had escaped the hell of the Forgotten Shore because of someone else's sacrifice must have pressed down upon him a lot. The 4 of them huddled together and waited. Sunny silently observed the faces of his friends, seeing sincere happiness and relief written all over them. Some, Kai especially, looked on the verge of getting emotional. Unlike him, they had no reason to feel a strange ambivalence about Changing Star's return. And looking at them, Sunny decided to ignore the darker part of his mind for a bit too. Whatever happened, he would have to deal with it then. If he had to die to avoid becoming a slave, he would. If he had to kill in order to remain free, that was not out of the question as well. But for now, he chose to just share this rare moment of joy with his friends. The founder of their cohort was back after all. Soon, the armored doors finally opened, and one of the awakened healers in the employ of the academy appeared from them. Everyone gathered in the waiting area held their breaths. Even Morgan of Valor looked up from her communicator, strange sparks igniting in her vermilion eyes. One of the government agents couldn't contain herself and asked, How is she? Lady Changing Star is really back." The healer lingered for a moment and then nodded. "She is. Her physical condition is fine, better than fine even, perfect. As for her mental condition, we will know when she wakes up. Lady Nephi's is currently sleeping." Someone from the crowd immediately spoke. "Sleeping? Do you mean that she is back in the dream realm?" The healer hesitated, then slowly shook her head. "No, Lady Nephi seems to have ascended, so she is simply asleep." For a moment, the crowd seemed to have lost the ability to speak, and then all hell broke loose. Despite the government's attempts to stall for time and control the narrative, just in a few minutes, the incredible news of changing stars' return spread across the network. Not long after that, another explosive rumor appeared claiming that she was now a master. Just like that, all of humanity learned that Nephis of the immortal Flame clan, the descendant of the two legendary pioneers and the famed hero of the Forgotten Shore, had become the first human in history to conquer the second nightmare as a sleeper, thus jumping ranks, and return to the waking world unscathed. Her already prolific fame and exalted status instantly soared as high as the sun. While Nephis slept, her arrival was already creating titanic waves in the mindset of millions of people. In front of the awakened academy, 100,000 candles continued to burn despite the falling snow, and cast by their flames, 100,000 shadows danced on the ground. The news of changing stars' return spread across the world like wildfire. The network practically exploded with an endless amount of discussions. Everyone wanted to share their excitement and celebrate the homecoming of the young hero who, without a doubt, was going to become one of the most powerful champions of humanity soon. While exaggerated, the reaction of both mundane humans and awakened alike was easy to understand. In this dark and fragile world that balanced on the verge of destruction, everyone longed for something to illuminate their lives and chase their fears away. Everyone desperately searched for hope. Thinking about it, Sunny couldn't help but remember the description of Neph's aspect, light bringer.
You are a creature of light that was banished and doomed to exist in the darkness. You bring radiance and warmth to wherever you go, but with it comes indescribable longing.
Was hope the longing it talked about? Longing was just another word for desire after all. In any case, the government had long used Nephis to satiate that desire. They had constructed an uplifting narrative around the events of the Forgotten Shore and made her the linchpin of the story. No matter how much Sunny hated the abhorrent movie adaptation that had been rushed through production soon after their awakening, he had to admit that it was a sign of how deeply the survivors of the Dreamer Army and their leader had affected the public. To be fair, the government had not needed to work too hard to turn Changing Star into an iconic figure. Her achievements had truly been singular and remarkable. Her perceived martyrdom had truly been compelling. What was more, Nephis had inherited an already established and powerful legend simply on account of her birthright. Her grandfather was the first human to conquer the second nightmare and become a master. Her father was the first to conquer the third and become a saint. Both of them were great warriors, pioneers, and revered heroes of humanity. And now, she had joined their ranks by becoming the first human to ascend directly from being a sleeper. Considering all that, he was not surprised to see how intensely people reacted to the news. Already, there were a lot of discussions on the network predicting that Changing Star would inevitably become the first to conquer the fourth nightmare and push humanity one step closer to salvation. As her parents and grandfather had done, if only they knew. If only they knew that sovereigns had already given up on their world, and that very soon hundreds of millions of people would probably die for it, and that the hero they were praising had much grander ambitions, conquer the fourth nightmare. No, that was too trivial for Changing Star of the immortal Flame clan. She was going to conquer all nightmares. She was going to destroy the spell itself. Or at least try to, even if the waking world had to burn as the consequence. While the government agents ran around with panicked expressions and most of the waiting crowd dissipated, Sunny found himself leaving the group and walking away to find something to eat. Morgan of Valor had left some time ago, so he did not feel too threatened. Sunny mused.
Oh, right, the true negotiations ended up never happening. I wonder what it means for my future.
Eventually, he settled in the hospital's cafeteria and forced himself to swallow some food. A few years ago, he would have been ecstatic to be able to feast on high-quality food like that. But now, he did not even feel the taste of various dishes. They might as well have been mimic meat or synth paste. Sonny sat quietly, consumed by thoughts, when Effie suddenly appeared nearby and landed on a chair near him. There was a mountain of food on her own tray. The huntress looked at him with a smile.
Great minds think alike, huh?
She took a bite out of a small cake, then swallowed it entirely and said with satisfaction,
The healers want us four to come help them when Nephi's wakes up, in case she becomes agitated again.
Sonny silently nodded. Effie sighed.
I can't believe that she just went and ascended. Well, I can actually. It is still amazing, though. Neph must have one hell of a crazy story to tell. It might even be more unbelievable than our own.
He shrugged, then put a spoonful of something mildly spicy in his mouth. The huntress studied him for a while, then suddenly said,
For someone who was just reunited with their first and best friend, you don't look too happy, doofus.
Sonny glanced at her, he retorted, who said that we are friends. Effie scoffed.
Don't lie to me, Sonny. I know how you feel about Nephi's and how much of it you feel. What's up with you?
He grimaced. Sonny demanded.
Lies, how can I lie?
Sonny lowered his eyes, hesitated for a while, and then said quietly, he admitted, stronger. I wanted to be stronger than her. I really, really tried. And to be honest, I am very annoyed that all of it was for nothing. The huntress looked at him with a strange expression.
Is that why you were in such a hurry to challenge the second nightmare?
He leaned back and turned away. Sonny conceded.
Oh yeah, that was a big part of it.
Effie lingered for a bit, then slowly shook her head.
Listen, Sonny, I am really sorry to say this, but you will never be stronger than Nephi's.
He looked at her sharply, sparks of anger igniting in his eyes. Sonny shot back. Oh yeah, why is that? She sighed.
It's very simple, really. Both of you are exceptional, talented, and have great will. Both of you are incredibly strong. But Sonny, it doesn't matter how fast you gain a new rank, how many nightmare creatures you kill, how many soul fragments you absorb. She will always be ahead.
She looked him in the eyes and said soberly.
It's because she has something that you lack. Nephi's she has, conviction, Sonny, and you don't. As long as that doesn't change, you will always be behind.
As he stared at her with resentment, Effie suddenly grinned and shrugged.
But hey, who cares? I have even less conviction than you and I'm doing great. Who needs it anyway? I would much rather have a full belly than something like that.
With that, she laughed and returned to her food, not paying the conversation any more attention. Sonny, however, remained still for some time. A somber expression appeared on his face. After a while, he sighed and silently resumed eating his meal. Sonny murmured.
Conviction, conviction, who needs it indeed?
Eventually, the four of them were invited into the room where Nephi slept. This time on a hospital bed, instead of inside of a closed coffin of a sleeping pod. The administrators of the academy wanted to avoid any more damage, so asking the members of Changing Stars cohort for help was a logical step. Seeing familiar faces first after waking up would probably calm her down. And if not, having four masters at hand would be enough to deal with any unforeseen complications, most likely. Sonny stood in the corner looking at Nephi's with a somber expression. Her pale face, her silver hair. For the past 2 years, he had often seen her through the transparent lid of the sleeping pod bathed in its ghostly light. Now that she was out and returned to the real world, Changing Star seemed much more material and strangely vulnerable. She was truly back, he sighed. Cassie was sitting on a chair beside the bed, while Effie and Kai were resting on a sofa. None of them knew when Neph was going to wake up, and they had already spent a couple hours waiting. Without having to discuss it, all four decided to stay quiet. So, by now, they were pretty bored. Sonny, on the other hand, was filled with more and more tension. The corner of his mouth twitched. Sonny grumbled.
This anticipation is killing me. It's pure torture.
He did not think that Nephis would abuse her power over him, but it was better to prepare for the worst. For that reason, Sunny was mentally going over all the clever ways he had thought of to undermine her absolute authority as his master. There were always ways. Owning an unwilling slave was not an easy endeavor, especially one as powerful and resourceful as him. That had been one of the reasons why he had chosen to kill the mirror beast instead of subjugating it, all that time ago. Still, Sunny could not help but feel a hint of fear. After a while, he shook his head and moved slightly. Then, without being noticed by anyone, Sunny silently merged with shadows. Hidden in their dark embrace, he hesitated for a few moments and then called upon Nightmare. A vast shadow appeared near him, all around him. This was the dark destrier in his true, shapeless form. Sunny allowed himself to be enveloped by the larger shadow, and then gave it a silent command. Happened next was hard to describe. He had only done this a few times in the past, and each time was as strange. It was a bit like traveling to the dream realm, but also different. Tired of waiting, Sunny had decided to travel to Neff's dreams. There was no sense in prolonging his anxious anticipation anyway. He had to see if Changing Star was still sane. He had to know that she was still herself. Soon, Sunny found himself on a dark shore. Beneath him was a vertical slope. Furious waves crashing against the cliffs far below. Some distance away, a tall and beautiful lighthouse stood, illuminating the absolute darkness with its radiant flame. Sunny studied it for a while and then nudged Nightmare to walk along the edge of the cliff. Sitting in the saddle, he rode the black steed and tried not to look around too much. Dreams were a strange place. They did not adhere to the logic of the real world and were always flowing, always changing. The more powerful a dreamer was, the more solid they sometimes appeared. They were also dangerous for dreamwalkers such as Nightmare and Sunny. The threats contained within them might not have been real, but by invading this subliminal space, the uninvited guests had to treat them as such. This was why Nightmare often returned wounded from his travels. If an Ascended dreamt of a powerful abomination, the dark destrier had to battle the abomination as if it was real. However, not only dreadful fiends posed a threat. His opponents were empowered by the dream itself, so their strength depended on the strength of the dreamer. Their actual shape did not matter that much. Nephis was very strong, so her nightmares were bound to be terrible as well. Soon the landscape around them changed. The dark shore and the lighthouse disappeared, and instead, the streets of a ruined city appeared from nowhere. With a bit of apprehension, Sunny recognized the familiar shapes of the stone buildings of the dark city. However, they were simultaneously the alloy towers of the siege capital. Their facades were broken with smoke and fire escaping from the cracks. A wide road was littered with burning debris, and a luxurious PTV lay overturned some distance away, its armored frame bent and riddled with holes. Blood was spilling on the melting asphalt from the shattered windows. Sunny slowly approached the PTV and then jumped off Nightmare's back. After hesitating for a moment, he bent down and looked inside the cabin. There were several corpses inside, all wearing mundane clothes. Most disturbingly, these people lacked faces and instead looked like smooth-faced mannequins. Their flesh, however, was quite real and terribly mangled. With a frown, he looked away and studied the surroundings. It did not take him long to notice a trail of blood leading away from the burning PTV. Leaving Nightmare behind, Sunny followed the trail. He crossed the street and entered the foyer of a business tower through a large hole in its wall. Looking around, Sunny noticed that the foyer strangely resembled the silent shore of the dark river they had crossed once a long time ago, while searching for the remains of the First Lord. White fog swirled above the water, full of silent whispers. There was only one thing that did not seem to fit. A large reception desk stood not too far away from him, drowning in shadows. Sunny slowly walked to it and then moved around. Behind the desk, leaning on it with her back, a young woman with silver hair sat on the ground. Her face was pale and tired, and her striking gray eyes were devoid of any light. She was wearing mundane clothes which were marred with blood. Sunny sighed and then said, he offered.
Well, hey, Neff.
The young woman slowly looked up and then smiled. Nephis replied.
Hey, Sunny.
A beautiful smile illuminated Neff's face, making her look much softer and younger than she usually seemed. In all the time they knew each other, Sunny had only seen her smile a few times, and every time he did, a hint of regret brushed against his heart. It was a shame for such a brilliant smile to appear so seldom. Maybe in her dreams, Changing Star allowed herself to show it more often. Looking at the reception desk serving as her cover, he tried to make his voice sound calm and asked. Sunny asked,
What are you doing here?
Nephis lingered for a moment and then looked down. She answered quietly, hiding. Sunny raised an eyebrow. He pressed, From what? Her voice grew quiet as she answered, still looking at the ground. Nephis whispered.
Bad people.
He sighed. It seemed that the memory this nightmare had spawned from belonged to a much younger Nephis. Something similar must have happened to her when she was a kid. And so, although Changing Star looked like her adult self, she was simultaneously a child. That meant that she was not supposed to have any memory of meeting and getting to know Sunny, and yet she did. Dreams were strange that way. All kinds of contradictions could exist within them, merging things that could not coexist in reality. Sunny lowered himself to the ground and sat next to Neph, leaning on the surface of the desk beside her. He remained silent for a while, and then said with a reassuring smile. Sunny offered.
Don't be afraid, I'll hide here with you. I am very good at hiding, you know. If bad people come, they will never see us.
Nephis slowly shook her head. She murmured, I don't know. Sunny crossed his arms. He added, And if they do see us, I'll deal with them. I am very good at dealing with things as well. She did not move for a long time, and then suddenly said, Nephis asked.
This is a dream, isn't it?
He almost flinched and then tried very hard to suppress a curse. That question was extremely startling. Well, what else did he expect? This was Nephis after all. Even the awakened terror of her first nightmare had failed to contain her within a dream. Regaining his composure, Sunny simply nodded. Nephis sighed. She mused.
It is too nice to be real. Strange. I haven't dreamt in a long, long dream.
Slowly, the space between them started to change. It flowed, transforming into something different. The darkness was dispelled by the radiance of an incandescent sun. The cold waters receded, making way for pristine white sand. Above them, there was now a boundless azure sky. Sunny felt an unbearable heat assault his skin. A few moments later, they were surrounded by a vast, scorching desert. Instead of a modern desk, their backs were against the trunk of a tall tree. Its bark was as white as the pristine sand, and its leaves were scarlet. Tens of thousands of skulls hung from the beautiful branches, fastened to them by glistening threads of black silk. More disturbingly, 2 human figures were cruelly nailed to the tree, hanging from it like prisoners. One of them was a man with black hair, dressed in dark clothes. The other was a woman in white, her hair glistening like silver. From where he sat, Sunny could not see their faces. Perhaps that was for the best. He opened his mouth, but then froze, realizing that he did not know what to say. There was too much. Too much he wanted to tell her, too much he wanted to ask her. There were matters they had to discuss that had to do with their future, the great clans, the sovereigns. There were matters they had to discuss that had to do with their past, the decisions they had made, the mistakes that had been committed. There were his emotions as well. His resentment, his anger, his pain. His joy, his glee. There were her emotions as well. All of this was so immense. Sunny was much older now than when they had first met. Even though only 3 years passed, those years contained lifetimes of bitter lessons he had learned. He had never been good with complicated feelings, and although he did make some progress on that front, Sunny was still far from being adept in these matters. So what was he supposed to say? He remained silent for a while. Then finally he looked at her and said the only thing that came to his mind. The most truthful one, Sunny said.
I missed you.
Nephis smiled and looked at him as well. She replied softly, I missed you too. Sunny let out a heavy sigh and slumped a little, full of strange relief. A moment later, however, his face turned dark and ugly. Gritting his teeth, he glared at her and spat. Sunny spat.
If you really missed me, then why the hell had you left me behind?
Neph's smile slowly dimmed. A few moments later, she looked away and sighed. Nephi's answered.
Because it was the better choice.
Sonny clenched his fists. He demanded, "Who the hell do you think you are? Who asked for your righteousness? Do you even know what you took from me? Who gave you the right to make that choice for me?" Changing Star looked down and remained silent for a bit. Then she said, Nephi said,
But I did not make it for you. I made it for me.
She studied the white desert for a while and then sighed. Nephi said,
If you remained with me, yes, maybe we would have been stronger together. Maybe we would have grown faster together. Maybe we would have been better together. Maybe we would have survived. But what were the chances of that? Unlike me, you can't heal yourself from terrible wounds. Your soul is not infused with the fire. Maybe you would have just died.
Nephi's looked at him, soft sparks igniting in her gray eyes. She continued, That was too many maybes, Sonny. I had to have the worst outcome in mind, so I made the decision that did not risk your life. But, make no mistake, it was not for you, it was for me. It was not that I did not want you to die, it was that I wanted to spare myself from having to watch you die. I had to protect myself too. She stared at the white sand and whispered. Nephi's whispered.
I buried too many people, Sonny. I deserve the right to be selfish, even if it did you harm.
He stared at her with a dark expression, then spat. Sonny spat.
Why do you even care whether I live or die?
Nephi's looked at him and smiled. The wind moved her silver hair, making it dance. Then she shrugged and said in an even tone, Nephi said,
Because I do.
What an infuriating woman.
Sonny appeared from the shadows and resumed his position in the corner. No one seemed to have noticed his absence, which was for the best. Their short conversation with Nephi's had been interrupted by the appearance of a ghastly demon with 6 arms and charred black holes instead of eyes. Sonny had done his best to restrain the abomination while Nightmare attacked it from the back. In the end, they managed to destroy it without sustaining any wounds. It had not been an easy battle, though. After that, Sonny felt too confused to continue the conversation and instead chose to return to the waking world. Sonny grumbled.
Because I do, that doesn't even make any sense.
It seemed that Neph's whole existence was designed to continuously stump him. From their first conversation on the Forgotten Shore until now, he just could not get how her mind worked. Protecting Cassie simply because she wanted to, caring about people simply because she did. The sheer audacity of being so unapologetically strange and irrational made him fume. Especially so because he suspected that Nephi's somehow derived strength from this bizarre attitude. Was that what Effie had meant when she talked about conviction? Sonny did not really understand what exactly it was that she thought he lacked. Was it will or determination? If so, the huntress was terribly mistaken. He might not have been the most principled of people, but few could boast of having more determination than Sonny. Otherwise, he would not have survived all the terrible trials that life had thrown his way. But maybe conviction was something else. Maybe having will and determination was not enough, unless they were aimed at something precise and guided by a singular purpose. After all, having a sharp sword is useless unless it is brandished against an enemy. Was conviction a guiding principle that shaped formless power and determination into a sharp blade? Was it an unbreakable will to achieve a certain purpose? No, it was not so simple. Sonny was not without a purpose, after all. He had his own goals. To have a good life, to be free, to make sure that those he cared about were safe. Why were these values not worthy of being called a conviction? If there was one thing he noticed, it was that all of his desires were centered around him. They were all aimed inside. He did not think that there was anything wrong with that. In fact, he considered it a great virtue. Nephi's, on the other hand, disregarded herself to an almost demented degree in pursuit of her goals. All her desires were aimed outside and incredibly ambitious. Was that the meaning of conviction then? Was it not only important to have a purpose, but also for the nature of that purpose to be larger than oneself? For the principles that guided one's determination to be founded in something vast and deep, thus pushing the person to rise higher and strive for more. All that sounded too high and mighty to Sonny. He was more inclined to value his own simple goals over such lofty ambitions. However, he couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable at the thought that someone with a greater purpose had an inherent advantage over someone who just wanted to be left alone, as he did. Unfortunately for Sonny, he was fated to compete against exactly this kind of people if he wanted to be free to live his life as he seemed fit. Only if he became greater than all of them would they leave him be, which was bound to result in a very inconvenient paradox. Sonny snapped.
Why am I even thinking about this? Damned Effie and her damned moments of insightfulness. Who says she's even right?
In any case, he had other things to consider. His visit to Neff's dream had not turned out how he hoped it would. Sonny did accomplish one of his goals and tentatively made sure that 2 years of lonely and, no doubt, harrowing travels through the dream realm had not driven Changing Star insane. The exact scope of damage done to her mind was yet to become clear, but at least she was not a raving lunatic. In fact, Nephi seemed strangely stable for a person who had gone through something that no one should have ever been forced to endure. Whether it was the result of her stalwart willpower or something else entirely, he did not know. Regardless, a lot of tension Sonny had felt slowly dissipated. Not all of it, however. While he had determined Neff's general mental state, he failed in his 2 other intentions. First, Sonny had not been able to find a bit of closure in dismantling her reasons for invoking his true name. He had expected Changing Star to hide behind a false and misguided veil of having done it for his own good. He had been prepared and wished to obliterate her hypocritical pretense of righteousness. He wanted to express his anger, fury, and resentment. He wanted to cause her to feel at least a small part of the anguish that she had caused him to feel. Bus Nephi's had subverted his expectations by readily admitting that her actions were nothing but selfish, making all the attacks and accusations he had prepared moot. That left Sonny confused and unsatisfied. The fight he had wanted to pick never happened, because the other person did not want to fight. His animosity was not only struggling against his own complicated feelings, but also completely one-sided. Sonny muttered.
Infuriating.
Much more importantly, Sonny had failed to learn the most vital information. He had not gathered the courage to ask the question that was bothering him the most. What were Changing Star's intentions toward their strange and inescapable bond? What was she going to do with her power over him? So many heavy, complicated, and frightening things were tied to that question. Once he asked it, there would be no going back. He could lose so many things that he cherished, and even more that he did not even have the opportunity to experience yet. Depending on the answer, the nature of their relationship could forever change. There was a possibility that it would cease to exist, even, although it might have seemed like he was burying his head in the sand. Sonny simply could not bring himself to have that fateful conversation yet. The stakes were too high, and so, for now, he decided to follow the easiest path and simply let some things remain unsaid. He wanted to see how the situation would develop first. There would always be time to act later. At least that was what he told himself. As time passed, the 4 masters remained silent. They were watching over the young woman who slept peacefully. Her nightmare slain by a transient shadow and his steed. After a while, Neff's eyelids quivered, and then slowly she opened her eyes. After it became apparent that Nephi's was not going to go on a destructive rampage, the cohort did not get a lot of time to spend with their friend before the government agents whisked her away. Cassie barely managed to squeeze her hand, while Effie and Kai could only express their joy with words. Sonny remained silent, still preoccupied with his tumultuous thoughts. The corner he was standing in became even darker than it had been before. Neff herself seemed a bit disoriented. So their short reunion had turned out to be somewhat muddled. There were certain procedures involved when a person awakened, and even more once they ascended. All kinds of interviews, evaluations, and tests had to take place. All kinds of reports had to be submitted, all types of permissions had to be granted, and all varieties of procedures had to be enacted. The bureaucratic machine stirred awake to legitimize and integrate a new master into the larger framework of humanity. Sonny knew the process well because he had gone through it himself. It was just that his own experience had been separated into two distinct instances and made smoother by Master Jet's participation. Nephi's, on the other hand, had to go through both sets of procedures at once, which was more or less unprecedented. She also did not enjoy the patronage of a high-ranking government representative. Yet, perhaps that would not last long. There were other complications as well. Her situation was unique and abnormal in more than one sense. Just the fact that she had become a master without establishing a gateway anchor in the dream realm alone was enough to make the bureaucracy stutter. The government agents had their work cut out for them. It was not all bad, however. The process, while slightly obnoxious, was there for a reason. It was not only about gathering the necessary information and officially establishing the Ascended's new and elevated status. It was also designed to help the return deal with the most damaging effects of suddenly coming back to safety after experiencing untold horrors in the nightmare, at least to a certain degree. No matter how strong Changing Star was, no one doubted that her harrowing adventure through the dreamal realm and the nightmare had left its scars on her mind. The government was well aware of how fragile many powerful awakened truly were. It was not only on guard against those who could break, but also experienced in employing all kinds of preventative measures to reduce the possibility of that happening. Due to how important Nephi's was both to the propaganda machine and to the actual defensive efforts of humanity as another special strategic asset, the government threw its best resources into ensuring that the initial steps of her rehabilitation went as smoothly as possible. Of course, she was free to decide how much exactly she was willing to share. Some basic tests, however, were mandatory since it was necessary to determine how safe it was to release her into the population. What it meant was that it would take long hours before the members of the cohort would be able to see Changing Star again. They weren't the only ones waiting too. At some point, Cassie had left and returned to the dream realm to inform the Fire Keepers of the incredible new development. Soon enough, dozens of them used the gateway in the ivory tower and returned to the waking world for the first time in months. Since their sleeping pods were situated right there in the hospital complex of the academy, it did not take a long time for all of them to gather in the hallway near where Nephi's was undergoing her interviews. Now, around 50 young awakened crowded it, as if standing guard. After spending almost half a year in the dream realm, the Fire Keepers looked rough around the edges. If not a little feral, they were wearing civilian clothes, but no one would mistake these people for mundane humans or even ordinary awakened. There was a strong sense of silent threat radiating from them. Their expressions were full of glee, but their gazes remained firm and heavy, making anyone who approached feel ill at ease. That was especially true for the members of Cassie's former cohort, which was now led by the stoic healer Shim. They were all on high alert and ready to pounce on anyone representing a threat. With the Fire Keepers standing guard, any potential action by the great clans was bound to end in failure or at least outright disaster. In fact, they seemed so fierce that even the security teams of the academy became nervous and sent a few cohorts of their own to keep watch on the celebrating group. It was easy to read the extreme apprehension on the faces of the security officers, though, awakened or not. They seemed to understand that they stood no chance against the elites of the Forgotten Shore if push came to shove. Observing all that, Sonny couldn't help but ask himself a question. If 6 months of hiding in the relative safety of the ivory tower had such a drastic effect on the Fire Keepers, then what had 2 years of traversing some of the direst regions of the dream realm done to Nephi's? After a while, he quietly approached Cassie and asked quietly. Sonny asked,
"How is it going?"
She turned her head slightly and frowned. Cassie asked,
What do you mean?
Sonny smiled darkly. He said, "Come on. There's no chance that you did not use your ability on one of the government agents handling Neff's processing. So what is happening?" She hesitated for a few moments, then sighed. Cassie replied,
She seems to be in shock somewhat, but mostly she's fine. Actually, it's a bit disturbing how fine she is.
He frowned. Sonny said,
"It's Nephi's, you know how she is."
Cassie slowly shook her head. She said, "She is human too, Sonny. It's just easy to forget that fact sometimes because it's her. Sunny fell silent, not knowing what to say. After a few moments, the blind girl suddenly spoke again. Cassie added,
She seems reluctant to speak about most of what happened to her, but at least she agreed to receive psychological counseling. That's a good start.
He blinked a couple of times. Nephi's agreed. To what? The idea of Changing Star being willing to undergo something like counseling did not fit into his head. It was just too bizarre to imagine. Sunny frowned. He mused, maybe she did change a little.
Hello, everyone. I am glad to meet you all again. I did not think that I would.
Before she was even done speaking, Cassie stepped forward and enveloped her in a tight hug. Sometime later, all 5 members of the cohort finally found themselves alone. The fire keepers were still around, but decided to give their leaders some much-needed privacy. As the result, only Nephi's, Sunny, Cassie, Effie, and Kai remained in a spacious hospital room. Changing Star was standing by the window, looking at the peaceful landscape of the academy ground with a strange, still expression. She seemed to have regressed to her old self, which had trouble communicating emotions and interacting with people. For that reason, it was hard to understand what she was thinking about. The others gave her some space. Despite the fact that Nephi's was standing right in front of them, it was not too easy to come to terms with the fact that she was actually, truly back. They were still struggling to get used to this new reality, but a warm wave of relief and happiness was slowly rising in their hearts. Sunny was no different. It was just that his joy was somewhat overshadowed by a contradicting feeling of unease and apprehension. Finally, Nephi sighed and turned around. A pale smile appeared on her face.
You are all masters. I did not expect that.
Effie, who was sitting comfortably on a cushy chair with her legs stretched, laughed. Effie shot back. You're one to talk. Neff studied the 4 of them, then let out a slow sigh.
I did not even know if all of you managed to survive. I hoped, of course. So I am very glad to see that you did, and helped each other.
A distant look appeared on Kai's face. He remained silent for a bit, remembering the events of the second nightmare, and then said gently,
Yes, we had each other to lean on in our darkest moments, but you were completely alone all that time. Lady Nephi's, please forgive me, but how did you survive?
Nephi's looked away with a smile.
I wasn't really completely alone, too.
Then she walked over to the hospital bed and sat down facing them.
There is not much to tell, really. The Crimson Terror was in its most vulnerable state when I reached the top of the spire. Unrestrained by the Dark Sea, she had absorbed countless souls and was in the middle of an arduous evolution. With the help of the Dawn Shard, I was able to strike her down.
That simple explanation did not really do justice to the incredible accomplishment of slaying a fallen terror, but Neff seemed reluctant to dwell too much on that part of her story. She also decided to skip the part about their confrontation with Sunny entirely. Instead, she looked at the window and continued.
After she died, however, the spire became unstable. The gateway collapsed, and the tower itself soon followed. I barely escaped the debris. The artificial sun of the Forgotten Shore was extinguished as well, submerging it into absolute darkness. The labyrinth itself perished, too, the crimson coral turning gray and slowly crumbling to dust. With no sea, no sun, and most nightmare creatures eradicated by the culling, it became a lightless and desolate place.
She sighed.
I traveled back to the Dark City and spent some time there, hunting down the remaining abominations and preparing for a long journey. With the help of the Dawn Shard and the Nameless Sun, many powerful nightmare creatures fell to my blade. For a while, I entertained the idea of trying to cross the Hollow Mountains, but eventually had to abandon it. Nothing but death awaited me there, so I had to choose another direction.
Nephi's paused for a moment, then continued in a steady tone.
I knew that the deadly mountain chain stretched further than Ravenheart in the west. There was no passage there. Going north meant moving further away from human citadels, so it only left east. There was a chance that the Hollow Mountains were not as tall and unassailable there, or even that there was an end to them somewhere in those unexplored regions. It was only a chance, but it was all that I had. So, I left the dark city and retraced the steps of the journey that Sunny Cassie and I had made before, avoiding the ashen barrow, of course.
Sunny moved slightly, remembering their encounter with Soul Devourer. He had not forgotten his promise to come back and destroy the damned tree. Granted, he had no plans of returning to the Forgotten Shore currently. Even his pettiness had a limit. Maybe he would still be able to exact his revenge on the vile fiend one day, though. Changing Star, meanwhile, continued her tale.
Eventually, I reached the edges of the Forgotten Shore and crossed into a vast and terrible desert. Seeing the sun and the stars once again, it was like a blessing. But that blessing came with its own curse. The desert had once been the site of a great battle, I think. Or maybe that land had been turned into a lifeless desert by the battle instead. In any case, echoes of the clash between powers well beyond our comprehension still linger there, making it a dire and deadly place.
As Sunny remembered the white desert from her dream, Nephi's paused, and then continued in a somber tone.
That point, it was too late for me to turn back. Following along the hollow mountains, I ventured into the desert and made my way further east. Unfortunately, no matter how many days I traveled, the misty peaks showed no signs of abating. Eventually, I knew that I could not continue. I think that the white desert is impossible to cross. The parts of it I only barely survived were on the periphery of the ancient battlefield. The deeper I went, the more terrifying it became. The inner reaches of that region, where the true clashes had happened, had to be a death zone of its own. Worse still, even if one manages to resist the many horrors dwelling there, the desert itself will eventually kill them. There is simply no way to survive it.
She looked at them, white sparks igniting in her eyes.
No way forward and no way back. I grew desperate enough to finally venture into the hollow mountains. However, I had no hope of traversing them and reaching the human territories on the other side. I had also failed to find any sign of a gateway in my long travels. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I tried to find a seed of nightmare. Eventually, and with some help, I encountered one near the boundary of the dark realm that hides within the mountains, and challenged it.
A pale smile appeared on Neff's face.
And here I am, safe and sound.
She grew silent for a few moments, and then added quietly,
Well, not quite, but I am still alive at least.
It took some time for the members of the cohort to digest Neff's story. Sunny, especially, felt like she did not tell them even a fraction of what had happened to her. But then again, was it even possible to describe 2 years of never-ending struggle for survival with just a few words? Not even considering the things that Changing Star might have wished to keep to herself. And he was sure that there were plenty. She would have had trouble describing even the things that she wanted to share. It was going to take time. As for the actual secrets, while he was dismayed and uneasy, Sunny himself was known to keep a lot of things close to his chest. More than that, they all had to be cautious about what they said. The room provided to Nephi's by the Academy might have been safe, but that did not mean that it was not monitored. That was the reason why both Effie and Kai remained mostly silent despite the fact that they clearly had a lot of questions. Unlike Sunny, they did not possess a good understanding of Changing Star's aspect in current class. All they knew was that she possessed a divine aspect, just like Sunny and Mordred did. Eventually, Cassie broke the silence.
It is fine, now that you are back. Everything is going to be fine.
She paused and then added somberly,
However, our current situation is very delicate.
Nephi's looked at her and frowned, the white sparks in her eyes becoming a little brighter.
Were there any complications after you returned from the Forgotten Shore?
She was alluding to Castor, the great clans, and the sovereigns that wished her dead, of course. Sunny finally spoke.
Not immediately, but we ran into some trouble not long before venturing into the second nightmare.
Changing Star's frown deepened.
Can you tell me what exactly happened?
He shrugged.
I can, but we'll get you up to speed later in a more private setting. For now, let's just say that there was supposed to be a negotiation with the representatives of the great clan Valor today, which fell through for obvious reasons.
Sunny paused for a moment and then added,
Other than that, the important things to know are, let me think, actually. I am a renowned academic and an instructor at the academy now. Cassie leads the Fire Keepers. Oh, Fire Keepers are the forgotten shore survivors whom you saw outside. They are basically your groupies, right? You're famous now. Very, very famous. There's even a movie about you with a very well-received romantic subplot. What else? We have a flying ship and an exclusive citadel in the dream realm. Effie moved in with me. Knight and Gale disbanded.
Neff's face slowly turned paler and paler. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and raised a hand.
What? Wait, what? Kai, is this true? Knight and Gale disbanded.
Sunny glanced at her darkly.
Really, that is your first question?
Kai, meanwhile, looked down in embarrassment.
Yes, I am sorry to say this, but Gale and I decided to go our separate ways. It is for the best. My status as a master would have just dragged him down, especially because my aspect evolved after I killed that dragon.
Neph's eyes blinked.
A dragon.
Sunny grinned.
Oh yes, Kai killed a transcendent dragon. Effie and I killed a couple of saints too. I even killed the same one twice. First time before I was beheaded, the second time after.
Changing Star slowly raised her second hand and grabbed her head.
I think I need a moment. Wait, can you start from the beginning?
A strange expression suddenly appeared on her face.
And did you say something about a movie? With a romantic subplot? What?
Sunny had a bit of fun filling Nephi's in on what had been going on with the four of them and the waking world during her absence. There was a lot of ground to cover, but he chose only the juiciest moments, like falling into a bottomless abyss for a month straight on top of a dead demon being burned by divine flames, and discovering an ancient tower left behind by a mysterious deity, or finding out that Effie was confined to a wheelchair in the waking world, only to see her leave it behind after conquering the second nightmare, or slaying a corrupted monster to get their hands on a shipwrecked flying vessel and repair it, or watching two saints obliterate an entire island as they thought to the death. The list went on and on. After a while, Neff weakly waved her hand.
I think I need a break. Can you guys give me a few minutes?
By then, it was already late into the night. It was dark outside the window, with only pale moonlight and powerful beams of defense turrets illuminating the black sky. Sunny grew silent, then shrugged.
You need some rest anyway. We can continue in the morning. The government should be ready to release you by then too. Have you thought about where you want to go? Staying here in the academy is an option too, of course.
He thought for a few moments, and then added awkwardly.
Feels stupid asking this, but do you have a place to stay? Do you have money? Are there people we need to contact? What is your clan's situation exactly?
Nephi's absent-mindedly touched her neck, then answered in a neutral tone.
There is a manor. That is pretty much the only property the clan has left. Everything else was liquidated and sold a long time ago. I sealed it before leaving for the first nightmare, so it should have remained empty for the last 3 years. It's hard to say what state it's in.
She lingered for a moment and then added,
I should have a bit of money left, and there are no people. Most of our retainers fled over the years, and the rest left after my grandmother passed away. That was not too long before my nightmare, too. I'll have to think about what to do now.
Sunny looked at her and then frowned a little.
Safety. Aren't you concerned about, your previous issues?
Nephi's remained silent for a long time, then shook her head.
I don't think anyone will try to kill me anytime soon.
He glanced at her with dark curiosity.
Why? Some people weren't shy about it before.
Changing Star looked at him and then said evenly,
Because now, I am not easily killed.
She wasn't wrong. As the members of the cohort left the room to give Nephi's time to rest, Sunny was deep in thought. Changing Star was an ascended tyrant now. Killing her was much harder than assassinating a mundane child that was protected only by the dwindling forces of a fallen clan, especially due to the nature of her powers. In fact, short of sending a saint to do the job, nothing the great clans could throw at her would work. Saints were a precious resource, however, and more than that. Rare enough to make their movements almost impossible to hide. Unless the sovereigns were ready to abandon all pretenses of civility, there was no easy way to get rid of Nephis anymore. She had ensured that by becoming a master directly. The situation had fundamentally changed. And that was not even accounting for the tremendous public outcry that would result from something like that ever coming to light, whether the great clans wanted to admit it or not. They were still tied to the rest of humanity. All awakened came from mundane humans after all. Losing the support of the masses would threaten the very base of the power that the sovereigns enjoyed. Come to think of it, getting rid of Sunny was almost equally as hard. He doubted that any master, with the exception of maybe direct children of Anvil of Valor, would be able to pose a serious threat to him. There were 2 more great clans to consider, of course. But he doubted that any scion of Song or Night was more dangerous than the Princess of War Morgan. So, what did it all mean? It meant that their position in the negotiations had vastly improved. They could exert much more pressure on Valor and achieve much better results. That was, if Nephis did not do anything extreme, of course, which she was more than capable of doing, considering her searing hatred for the 3 sovereigns. After hesitating for a bit, Sunny walked over to Cassie, leaned on the wall near her, and asked quietly,
What do you think she will do?
The blind girl understood his meaning without having to specify what exactly the question was about. Perhaps she was considering the same issue. Cassie lingered for a moment, then said quietly,
Negotiate.
Sunny barely suppressed a chuckle.
Negotiate? Are we talking about the same Nephis? Do you know how much she despises the great clans? What her insane ambitions are? Somehow I feel that 2 years of barely clinging to life in the dream realm did nothing to blunt her resolve. If anything, I think that it has only been sharpened.
The blind girl remained silent for a while, then sighed.
I think so too. However, there is little choice. She is still too weak to face the enemy directly. It is because her resolve remains the same that she will have to make herself flexible.
A dark expression appeared on Sunny's face.
When have you ever known Neph to be flexible?
Cassie turned her head slightly, facing him. Her expression was somber and serious.
Neph can be whatever she needs to be to achieve her goals. Same as you, don't forget that.
What was that supposed to mean? Sunny grimaced, then looked away. After a while, he asked in a grim tone,
And so where does it leave us?
Whether he wanted it or not, he was tied to Nephis. That bond was strong but not unbreakable. If he really wanted to, he could attempt to destroy it. He could kill her. He could run away. He could try to find a more obscure method. However, Sunny did not know if he was willing to pay the price of destroying their bond. At least not until he saw a sign that Changing Star was willing to wield her power as his master, not just possess it, unless she did. He was only a slave in the name. Although reluctantly, Sunny was barely able to tolerate such an arrangement. Having a master that was unwilling to exercise her power was even beneficial to him, since it protected him from others who would want to abuse that power, like Mordred, for example. If his position as Neph's shadow ever gained substance due to her actions, however, then one of them was going to have to die. That Sunny was certain of. He wouldn't hold anything back to make sure that he was the one left standing in the end as well. But that moment had not yet come, and hopefully, it was never going to. So, for now, his future was doomed to be influenced by the decisions Nephis made. The blind girl sighed.
Where does it leave us? Even I don't know. Everything is changing, Sunny, and all we can do is try to change as fast as it does. That is the only way to keep ourselves and those we care about safe from the world.
Sunny looked at Cassie, trying to understand the implications hidden in her words. Then he said in a grim tone,
And who's going to keep the world safe from us?
The next day, a small convoy of PTVs left the academy grounds. Most of them carried the fire keepers, while the members of the cohort were seated together in one of the vehicles. For obvious reasons, neither Sunny nor Effie knew how to drive. Cassie was unable to steer a PTV as well. So, in a strange turn of events, ascended Nightingale, a famous idol and global celebrity, ended up playing the role of the chauffeur. Kai and Sunny sat in the front, while the three young women remained at the back of the vehicle. As the convoy moved through the streets of the city, they briefly explained the more sensitive details of the cohort's current situation to Nephis. The column of PTVs was headed toward a remote district where Immortal Flame's sealed manor was situated. It was decided that the Fire Keepers would establish their Waking World headquarters there. At some point, however, a single vehicle quietly separated from the convoy and dove into a high-speed tunnel unnoticed. Soon, it appeared in a peaceful neighborhood full of beautiful terraces and parked near a gray two-story house with a cozy synthwood porch. Sunny left the PTV first and then stood silently for a few moments, waiting for others to do the same. Then, he looked at Nephis, cleared his throat, and said awkwardly,
"Welcome to my humble abode, I guess. It has designer lamps and a state-of-the-art refrigerator, among other things."
After the five of them walked inside, Nephis remained silent for a few moments as she looked around. Although her face was still and stoic as ever, Sunny could have sworn that he noticed a hint of curiosity reflected in her cold gray eyes. After a while, she asked,
"This is your home?"
Due to her sheltered upbringing, Changing Star had probably never been in a normal residence. Strangely, she was someone who had only experienced living in upscale manors and squalid Dream Realm slums, with nothing in between. Still, Sunny was not discouraged. He grinned and nodded proudly.
"Yes, bought it fair and square with the contribution points from my first research paper. I own this place."
Nephis hesitated.
"What happened to the walls?"
His smile dimmed a little.
"Well, Effie happened."
Of course, he had long cleaned the mess that the Huntress created after ascending. However, Sunny had been too preoccupied with other matters to enact proper repairs. As the result, the guest bedroom only had a flimsy curtain covering its irregular-shaped entrance, but no door.
"Maybe I should get to it."
Sunny cleared his throat, then gestured at the living room section of the main space.
"Make yourself comfortable. I'll make us something to eat."
As the cohort settled, he walked to the kitchen area and stood in front of the open refrigerator for some time, thinking. For some reason, Sunny had a strong desire to cook up something special. Nephis must have been sick of eating monster meat for years. So, finally, he produced a number of ingredients and laid them out on the cooking surfaces, then started the preparations.
Fried rice should do the job. Omurus, do I have eggs?"
As he went about it, the discussion reached a poignant moment. Cassie was finishing describing the important details of the reason for their tense relationship with Clan Valor.
"And so we accomplished our goal and ascended. However, that man, Mordred, he must have ascended as well. His clan doesn't know that yet, so their response was only mildly aggressive. Sky Tide of White Feather took most of the blame for his escape and the consequent death of Saint Cormac. That did not save us from all fallout, sadly."
She paused and then added somberly,
"They have secretly captured 2 of the loyalist Forgotten Shore survivors. The rest of us took shelter in the Dream Realm. For the past 6 months, Sunny's contact in the government acted as an intermediary to arrange a peaceful negotiation. It seems that Valor is finally ready to talk, but they aim to recruit at least one of us into their clan."
The blind girl sighed.
"The 4 of us are already a very important asset, but with the addition of the Fire Keepers, our value is nothing short of tremendous. If they can't get all of us, they are determined to at least make sure that we don't pledge allegiance to their competitors. Of course, now that you are here, the situation has become even more fraught with tension. Valor will be much more motivated."
Cassie smiled weakly, and then said in an apologetic tone,
"I'm sorry to have to burden you with all that right after you return."
Nephi's remained silent for a few moments, then shook her head.
No, you were right to inform me. Thank you.
A grim and thoughtful look appeared on her face. Sunny, meanwhile, listened to the conversation silently. He was darkly perplexed by the fact that his life had turned out in such a way that encountering words like loyalists, government contact, and allegiance in a casual conversation did not seem out of place. Effie, meanwhile, looked at Changing Star with curiosity and asked,
I get what our problem with the great clans is. What's your problem with them? I thought that you, of all people, would have been chummy with the top legacy's princess.
Nephi's looked at her without any amusement.
They want me dead.
The huntress blinked a couple of times.
What and why?
Changing Star shrugged.
You'll have to ask them.
Effie remained silent for a while, thinking. After some time, she frowned and asked,
And so was Castor.
Nephi simply nodded.
He was.
Kai looked at them with confusion.
He was what?
Everyone turned to him, suddenly realizing that the archer was less informed about some of the darker secrets of what had happened on the Forgotten Shore than the rest of them. After a while, Effie shook her head.
I mean, aren't you the walking lie detector? What do you think Castor was up to?
Kai coughed.
Oh, he was indeed a bit dishonest sometimes, but I just assumed that he was trying to hide his feeling for Lady Nephi's.
At that moment, Sunny walked over carrying 7 plates. He held 2 in his hands, 2 more in shadowy limbs that played the role of a second pair of hands, balanced 2 on his forearms, and the 7th was swaying slightly on top of a tangible shadow that resembled a long tail. Placing a plate of delicious, steaming amurus in front of Kai, he said with a crooked grin,
Oh, he had feelings for her for sure, the feelings of wishing to kill her to complete his mission. Sadly, he stumbled on me first.
It was a sad thing, indeed. If Sunny had not killed Castor, if Nephi's had known in advance that slaying the Crimson Terror would force the Spire to seek another conduit, if Cassie's vision had been more detailed, well, there was no point in feeling regret now. What had been done was done. The current conversation just went to show that Kai's strange flaw, while useful, was also often detrimental and misleading. As Kai stared into the distance in stunned silence, Sunny placed the other plates on the table, pushed 3 of them toward Effie, dismissed the shadows, and landed on a soft armchair. Then he picked up his utensils, smelled the amurus, and let out a satisfied sigh.
What are you waiting for, fools? Dig in.
The amurus disappeared from the plates with a speed that made Sunny a bit full of himself. He smiled proudly, and then looked at Nephi's.
So, what do you think about the mess we're in?
She put down her utensils, looked at the empty plate with a hint of regret, and then asked,
That Mordred, the rank of his aspect is the same as ours.
Sunny nodded, prompting her to frown, while she thought he reluctantly added,
He is also older and more powerful than us and possesses more knowledge than anyone in the waking world should have. Other than that, he is. Actually, I don't know what he is, I just feel that something is very wrong with that guy. Regardless, he is dead set on destroying Clan Valor. It is just hard to tell how he is going to go about accomplishing that goal.
Changing Star remained silent for a few moments, then said evenly,
He is going to search for allies.
Sunny's expression grew a little darker.
Mordred is not exactly a team player.
Nephi slowly shook her head.
It doesn't matter. No matter how powerful he has become, it won't be enough to reach his goals. The enemy is too strong. Their power is too absolute.
She did not say it, but from the grim expression on her face, Sunny could guess what Changing Star was thinking about. That she was in the exact same position, which did not bode well. He grimaced.
Do you think that we should expect to find the bastard on our doorstep one day? The enemy of my enemy and all that?
Sunny was not looking forward to meeting Mordred again, let alone getting entangled with him in any shape or form. As far as he was concerned, the Prince of Nothing would bring nothing but trouble. Nephis frowned, then said with uncertainty,
No, I doubt it.
Well, if she was right, that was a relief. At that moment, Cassie deactivated her communicator and turned to face them.
The firekeepers have reached the immortal Flame Manor. They are putting on a show to make it seem like there are all kinds of activity going on inside. Hopefully, that is going to make most people think that you are there with them. You should not be bothered by anyone here for a while.
She paused for a moment, then sighed.
But that is not going to last long. Maybe a week. The rest of us should not linger as well. It would be strange if Kai, Effie, and I are not seen at the manor. We will leave shortly and join the firekeepers.
Which would leave Sunny and Nephis alone. He did not know how to feel about that. Effie, meanwhile, glanced at the empty plates and said in a petulant tone,
I live here as well, you know.
Cassie turned to her with a deadpan expression.
And not for the next week, you don't.
As the huntress let out a sigh, the blind girl hesitated for a few seconds and then said,
I am also in contact with the government representatives and Clan Valor. They understand the pressure you are facing so soon after you return, so they are willing to be patient. For now, that will buy you a short buffer before they come knocking. Be ready to receive some requests for public appearances and so on in a week or two, as well as demands to resume the negotiations. We can stall for a time, but not forever.
Nephis looked at her calmly, then asked,
What about Song and Night?
Cassie frowned.
Clan Song might try to get involved in the negotiations, but I don't expect them to be too forceful. They are in a more advantageous position than Valor right now, after all. As for the House of Night, they are remaining strangely passive these days for some reason. Maybe they just know that they have less to offer than the other two great clans and don't want to bother.
Sunny had a different explanation for why the Nightwalkers had less time to participate in the schemes of the two greater clans, but chose to remain silent. The information provided to him by Master Jet had been shared in confidence. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't go around spreading it. The blind girl sighed, then rose from her seat.
Try to rest well during this week, Neff. Don't neglect your recovery. We know that you are strong, but no one is truly infallible. Perhaps none of us has experienced as much pain as you had in these past few years, but we faced our share, some more than others.
She briefly faced Sunny, then turned away and lowered her head.
So, we understand how precarious it is to go on as if nothing happened without giving the old wounds a chance to heal. Don't be stubborn and have some pity on yourself for a change.
Nephis looked at her. After a few moments, a pale smile appeared on her face.
You don't have to lecture me, Cass. You are overestimating my resolve. I am more than willing to rest for a while. Happy even.
The words rest and happy hardly fit in the image of changing star they were accustomed to, but no one said anything. An ordeal like the one she had gone through was bound to change anyone, even someone as determined and unflinching as Nephis. Cassie smiled, and then addressed Effie and Kai.
Let's go then. There's a lot of work to be done at the manor. We need to renovate it a little and make some adjustments to convert it into a proper clan headquarters.
Soon they said their goodbyes and left. The PTV came online and swiftly disappeared from view. Sunny and Nephis were left alone in the cozy gray house. He hesitated for a bit, and then looked at her with a bit of awkwardness.
Make yourself at home, I guess. Actually, let me give you a tour.